Chapter 451, Drone Vision. The camera edition of the drone looked like it had been there from the very beginning. Michael couldn't describe it. It was seamless, like a new limb grown from a plant. He could only attribute this to the spirit of old. He wondered what kind of material it was that could create such a change in a mithril metal. Unfortunately, even ChatJK4 had no answer for his question. If he needed to know more about it, then he would probably have to go in the very depths of the ocean and visit Atlantis. This was definitely on his checklist for later, probably only if he had fully established himself in the Queen's region. He looked at the drone and immediately wanted to test out the new feature that he just upgraded. The problem was, he had no idea how to access the drone vision. ChatJK4, a little help here? Please press the Richest button on the very bottom part of the drone. Following the instructions, Michael flipped the drone upside down and saw a small red button right next to the camera. This activates the drone vision? It looks more like those reset buttons on Wi-Fi routers. He pressed the button and suddenly, the drone squirmed in his hands as some kind of mechanism inside started to move. After a second, a rectangular box plopped out of the drone's frames. It reminded him of a DVD player when the storage of the disc would shoot out from the front. Except this time it wasn't a DVD at all. It was a pair of glasses that were extremely thin and made out of pure mithril metal. Whoa! He couldn't help but mutter. He slowly picked up the glasses from its container, which quickly shot back towards the frame once he had the glasses in his hands. He observed the glasses, which looked like visors from a motorcycle helmet. The very frame was made out of mithril, with the wide glasses having a darker tint than he expected. He unfolded the hinges, realizing that it looked like ordinary glasses from his first observation. The only special thing about it was its frame, which was made out of mithril. Even looking through the visor, he saw nothing different. It was very tinted though, and prevented him from seeing through it and completely disregarding the very purpose of glasses. He put it on and it fit perfectly in his forehead. And as soon as it rested on the nose of his bridge, a system interface suddenly appeared in his vision. Booting up drone vision. Complete. And suddenly, Michael felt his eyesight turn completely black. Even when he turned around, he couldn't see anything around himself. Welcome to the drone. His vision suddenly returned. But this time it was completely different from his normal point of view. He didn't know how, but he could somehow see through a complete 360-degree vision all around him. The weird part was that it felt completely normal for him, as if he had been accustomed to this his entire life. And looking back, he realized that he could see himself sitting on the bed. It was literally an out-of-body experience for him. Seeing his own body sitting completely still with the drone glasses still on his head made him feel a little bit awkward, as if he had reincarnated once again, but this time into a drone. This is trippy. Felt like he was in a completely different body. He couldn't even move his own body, as it just sat there completely still like a wax version of himself. But by losing control of his own body, he felt an entirely new body to control. He didn't just control the drone. He was the drone. The 4 propellers around him felt like new limbs. He could control their rotation all in sync or one by one. This would allow him to have aerial superiority unlike anything he had ever done. He willed the propellers to roar into life, lifting off from his bed. He was now flying as a drone. He felt more freedom with this than simply using a flight spell with his old body. How far can I go? Fired up with this question, he saw an open window to the side and decided to fly out into the skies. The association employees that had been calmly walking through the marble floorings of the building turned their heads everywhere as they tried to search for the buzzing sound that they heard echoing through the walls. Michael kept going higher and higher in the skies, and with his 360-degree view camera, he could see the entirety of Metropolis. All its districts, all its walls, and all its megastructures. He could see them all. Deciding that he hadn't had enough, Michael forced the propellers to spin faster and faster, allowing the drone to shoot through to the skies and up at the clouds. As he shot through the stratosphere, he didn't feel any loss in control over the drone. ChatJK4 was right. As long as he was in control of the drone, then he could take it through the 4 corners of the world and he would still be able to control it with no issues. Even if his drone and his body were separated through millions of miles, it would still function properly as before. I can go anywhere I want with this drone. But what if I want to go back? Do you wish to exit the drone vision? Michael nodded. Exiting in 3, 2, 1. And all of a sudden, his vision turned black just like before. A second later, his eyesight returned, letting him see the drone glasses still attached to his head. I can feel my body. That's good. He picked up the glasses on his head and folded it back up. The transition between the drone vision was pretty smooth. He didn't feel any discomfort from it at all. And as long as he could get over the mental barrier of inhabiting an actual drone, it would just be like turning the lights on and off. I can return to my body instantly. But how about my drone? Your drone is currently 20 kilometers in the sky. It is making its way towards your location at this very second. It will take approximately 2 minutes and 39 seconds before it arrives. His drone would be left wherever he left it, which wasn't much of a problem. He was satisfied as long as he could return to his normal body instantaneously regardless of how far he left his drone. 2 minutes later, the drone entered the window and landed back in the bed. The container shot out from its side, and he returned the glasses to its rightful place. This upgrade is so good, but I'm gonna need more upgrades. He took out the vial of Sue in his pockets. It's time to coat you into my drone, he thought. Coating Sue into a mithril artifact required the expertise of someone like Chucky. But thankfully, ChatJK4 had observed the process from start to finish, allowing it to copy the magic theory involved in the spell. And before he could even ask, a load of information washed over his head, giving him an entirely new spell for coating Sue. Chapter 452, Firepower. The Hephaestus lineage inherited a specific skill that allowed them to coat Sue onto a mithril relic perfectly. And because it was an inherited skill, only they could use it. But thanks to ChatJK4's skill synthesis, it was able to pick apart the spell from its very foundations and recreate it into something that Michael could use. This was easy for the best AI assistant in the entire universe. Following the magic theory in his head, he closed his eyes and summoned a giant magic circle beneath him. The dark green vial floated in the air from the spell, with the cork automatically uncapping to reveal the 3 remaining drops of that mysterious transparent and viscous liquid. He then raised his hand, with 3 drops of blood slowly leaking out of the tip of his finger. These drops of blood floated in the air, just as the 3 drops of Sue floated from the vial. Chucky's method included a lot of processes and steps that he had to take whenever he coated a mithril relic. Usually, it took him 5 to 10 minutes. But ChatJK4's new skill got rid of any unnecessary magic and streamlined the whole process. The 3 drops of blood and 3 drops of Sue suddenly shot towards each other like bullets. They collided in mid-air, creating a fine mist of perfectly proportioned mixture of the two. Once the Sue acclimated with the DNA in the blood, the fine mist coagulated into one giant drop of red liquid. He reached for the liquid with his finger. It floated just an inch away from his skin. He then slowly pushed this liquid onto the drone until it finally made contact with the mithril artifact. Upon recognizing the Sue in its frame, the drone suddenly roared into life. He didn't know if he was seeing things, but he could have sworn that the drone's frame moved for a tiny bit. And unlike before, the drone seemed to have sucked in the drops of Sue like a thirsty man trapped in a desert. Michael was supposed to wipe the Sue onto the entire surface area of the drone, but it had absorbed it in its entirety instead. The mixture of blood and Sue slowly propagated through the drone's body like veins, pulsated as if giving life to the machine. A few seconds later, the drone finally finished absorbing the Sue. The red veins on its surface disappeared, as if recessing to the deepest parts of its body. And in this moment, another system interface appeared in front of his eyes. Mithril artifact, drone, spirit of old, 3 drops, vision, camera, drone vision, shared vision, weapon, Unity firearms, Unity gun, ability, switch inventory, propeller, stealth, muffled propeller, Speed. Double blades. Frame. Stealth. Camouflage. Invisibility. Defense. Unity shield. Expansion. Drones. Mini drone. Morph. Reduce. Enlarge. Now that he upgraded the drone vision, a new upgrade popped up. Shared vision. This upgrade allows the drone glasses to become more transparent. This will lessen the burden of the software into your consciousness, allowing you to pilot the drone even if you are in your own body. The drone's camera will also experience a huge upgrade. Its image quality will be clear enough to see through disturbances that a diva and an ability will make in reality before they are fully activated. Cost. 2 drops. This was an upgrade worth saving for. If he didn't already have a few upgrades in mind, he would have definitely purchased this upgrade immediately. This upgrade will allow you to see abilities as if you were wearing a thermal vision camera. Just the fact that he could pilot the drone without losing his own bodily functions was enough of a reason to buy the upgrade. But then, the huge upgrade in camera quality allowed him to actually have a visual representation of an ability. Should I? I really want to. He had to restrain himself. Despite how useful that upgrade would be, there were still a lot of upgrades that he could buy with those drops. For example, the one purchase he had in mind was none other than the Unity gun upgrade. Having offensive capabilities for his drone would finally make it worthy to be named as a weapon. Others had axes, swords, and morning stars. Now he had a flying gun. He focused on the system interface and clicked on the purchase option. Would you like to buy this upgrade for 1 drop? Michael said yes, and immediately the drone started to pulsate with light. His eyes widened as he realized that he would see the mithril artifact's transformation right in front of his eyes. He missed his chance before, but now, seeing it up close and personal would allow him to have a much better understanding about the relationship of Sue and mithril. The red veins reappeared on the drone's frame, almost like the inner wiring of the machine had surfaced. Small nanoparticles surged out of the drone's body as it started to form the 2 barrels that would become the drone's guns. It's literally growing. The spirit of old is some kind of fertilizer that allows the mithril artifact to morph and evolve. He was so fascinated with the drone's upgrade that he ended up watching it the whole way through, from start to finish. About 30 minutes later, the drone's red, linear veins descended into the depths of the mithril metal. Now, there were these 2 antenna-like barrels attached to the side of the drone. Using his supreme skill, he telepathically moved the antennas to see its range of motion. And luckily, it had a ball hinge behind it, allowing it to have a wide degree of freedom in its movement. In this moment, he knew how to instinctively fire the cannons at any time he liked. With those 2, he could essentially have 2 guns firing off at the same time for a much stronger firepower, or split it to hit 2 targets instead. His aim was limited if he just controlled the drone normally without the drone vision. Essentially, he could target it as long as he could see it in front of him. But he was sure that if he put on those glasses, he would have a much greater degree of accuracy with those guns. This was especially so with the 360-degree view. He really wanted to test it out, but he decided to do it later. After all, he was still in the association building, with lots of civilians that could end up getting caught in the crossfire. He'd test it out once he purchased all the upgrades for the drone. Speaking of which, he looked through the options once again. With only 2 drops left, he had to be picky. And once again, a new option popped up right next to the newly purchased Unity gun. This time, there were 2 upgrades he could buy. Unity Gun's MK. 2. This upgrade will double the barrels for the current drone. The reload time will also be reduced for more damage per second. Any mini drones that you have purchased will also be equipped with their own barrel for a single Unity gun. Cost. 2 drops. Unity Grenades. This upgrade will allow the drone to throw grenades that detonate with the power of Unity. Aside from the destructive explosiveness of the bomb, the Unity Grenade will also disable all mana within its vicinity, and will disrupt abilities for a limited time. Cost. 2 drops. Chapter 453. Hesitating on upgrades. Michael once again had to restrain himself from impulsively buying these upgrades. He almost cursed himself for clicking on the option, because now he would be burdened by the possibility of an upgrade he couldn't yet buy. These upgrades are really good, but they cost more too. He still thought that purchasing the base upgrades would give him more value than the secondary tier upgrades. For example, the second upgrade he wanted to buy was the mini drone. Controlling 2 of these drones effectively doubled its usefulness. If he fought against a magnetic during a duel, the fight would become 3 versus 1 with the drones by his side. The only problem he had with the mini drone was that its usefulness was very limited for now. It would only truly show its usefulness once he upgraded the Unity gun MK.2, when the mini drone would get its own gun. At that point, getting the upgrade could be considered as a necessity. I can't decide. He could also go the stealth route and upgrade the muffled propeller and the camouflage options to really turn the drone into a silent killer. However, he would have to spend both drops he had on acquiring this, which Michael was very hesitant about. After all, he wasn't really thinking about spying on anyone for now. The value it would give him just wasn't worth it for spending the 2 drops he currently had. Should I do the mini drone and the camouflage? Or maybe I should just go all in and purchase one of the Tier 2 upgrades? After seeing the secondary tier options that he could buy, Michael was very tempted to just spend the drops on a single upgrade. The shared vision was amazing if he wanted full visibility over a battlefield. If he was a general, then this would be his immediate pick for the upgrade. Having the 360-degree piloting view would allow him to oversee the battlefield in its entirety, giving his opponents no chance for him to ambush him. Meanwhile, the 2 firearm upgrades were an immediate boost to his offensive capabilities. He spent so much hesitating on the right choice that Yuna finally returned into his room. When he regained consciousness, she left to fetch everyone else who came all the way from the nation of Reborn. His parents and the entire crew of the Reborn company swarmed into his room with worried looks on their faces. "Oh, my sweet honey baby, you're okay." Lilia immediately jumped in front of the pack and hugged him intensely. She squished her cheeks onto his, smothering him. Michael mumbled. "Oh, what has happened to you, honey? You can't talk." Bart immediately pulled her apart from Michael. "Dear, you're smothering him. No wonder he couldn't talk." "Oh." Michael put some distance away from his mom. "I was just saying that there was no need to worry. I just passed out from exhaustion." Still, there was an obvious look of worry from Bart and Lilia. This wasn't the first time that their son unexpectedly lost consciousness without an obvious explanation. "Lord Michael, are you holding up all right?" Shiina asked, bowing her head. "As up as I'll ever be," he replied with a smile. His obvious good mood released any worries they had for his well-being. His mother thought that it was because of her presence, but it was actually because of the upgrade options he saw earlier. "Bro Mike, this metropolis is so big. Are we going to live here soon?" Zion asked. "Ho ho ho. It's much bigger the last time I saw it." "Oh wait, I don't remember. As big as it is, we'll soon expand our business in all corners of the territory." "I've got the permit," he replied, revealing the red coin he got from the association. So many people here, so many people to spy on," Fudge muttered. "Master, don't you worry. We've already started our preliminary sweep of the entire metropolis." "Not yet, Fudge. We can't just trespass on other people's property when we haven't even got our own place in Metropolis. Wait until we've settled." He then tossed the red coin permit to Castell, who took it as if it weighed 100 kilograms. "I'll assume you'll handle our expansion here in Metropolis?" he asked her. The CO maid firmly nodded. "You can count on me, young master." "Have you decided on where you're going to build your headquarters here?" Yuna asked him. "Not yet. And frankly, I have no idea." "Well, I have good news and bad news for you." A new voice suddenly emerged from behind the door. Everyone turned to look at the new visitor. Once Yuna saw who it was, her eyes immediately lit up. Claudia! The aunt and niece had a nice little reunion as they hugged each other tightly. They exchanged some pleasantries with each other, catching up on what they'd been doing. When all of a sudden, Lilia appeared behind Yuna to introduce herself to Claudia. Hello, I'm Michael's mother, Lilia. I've heard so much about you from Yuna's letters, Claudia said, shaking hands with Lilia. Oh really? I hope it's good. We've been treating her well under our care. Michael immediately got up off the bed and interrupted their conversation. Right now, his mother acted normal. But eventually, she would get up to her usual schemes about setting him up with Yuna. And he didn't want Claudia to get involved in that. Ahem, Claudia. What were you talking about? She faced Michael and told him about what happened while he was unconscious. She told him about the appearance of the wyverns in the southern shores. She told him about the parade planned by Alaric Goldstone, and most especially, she told him about the current commotion going on in Main Street of the Upperwood District. Wyverns? This means that the foreigners will arrive in the Queen's region soon, Yuna realized. This is huge. That's right, Claudia agreed. And right now, duels are popping up all over Metropolis as companies try to prepare. Michael, I wanted to reserve Main Street for your company, but that's not possible now. Jaka chimed in with his own opinion. Why do we have to go to this Main Street? Can't we just choose another land? That's right, Zion agreed. Why do we have to follow this Alaric guy's parade plans? We'll make our own. I agree, Omisu silently voted. Yuna was the first to dispel their ideas. That's not possible. Alaric was only able to plan the parade because he influenced the Duke of Metropolis to agree to his terms. We don't yet have the influence to change that. Claudia looked at her niece, noticing that she used the word we when referring to the Reborn company. Yuna had completely integrated herself into this group. Michael eventually agreed with Yuna. They would need time to build up their power in Metropolis if they wanted to go that route. However, the arrival of the tourists wouldn't wait for him. It was much more logical to follow Alaric's parade and simply take advantage of the route. Those wyverns. They're carrying tourists, right? What kind? Claudia listed out all the possible demi-human tourists from all over the globe. Vampires, werewolves, mermen, you name it. They're probably there. His ears perked up. Mermen? They're from Atlantis, meaning they'd be more knowledgeable about Sioux. Or maybe they even have it themselves. Chapter 454. Fighting for Main Street. I'll join that parade, he declared. He hoped that the arrival of those mermen would bring him one step closer to obtaining more and more Sioux for his drone upgrades. He couldn't help but let his imagination run wild as he thought of all the upgrades he could buy if he had more Sioux drops. But for him to accomplish that, he had to play the game Alaric made. The parade would focus all the tourists into one specific route. And if he got a spot at one of those prestigious lands, then he could get their attention and hopefully more. You want a location on Main Street? Claudia asked. Yes, that's where the route will go, right? It was the only place that he had a chance to obtain. Most of the territory in the parade route was already owned by other companies. He wouldn't even be surprised if a majority was owned by Gilderin, Alaric's company. And with the rules of duel prohibiting him from challenging someone in a higher class than him, he would be pressed to find a location he could obtain. His only chance was Main Street. Unfortunately, though, he wasn't the only one thinking that. The fact that it was uninhabited due to FlareCorp's dismissal made it possible for all the companies in the Upperwood District to vie for a spot. You have to register for the tournament now, Claudia advised. You're lucky you woke up today because the registration would have ended today. You're issuing a tournament? Yuna asked, surprised. Yes. Due to the amount of companies fighting for a spot in Main Street, we had no choice but to start an all-around tournament to accommodate all duelers. What's the tournament about? He asked them. My aunt told you about duels, right? Usually, duels only have two parties fighting against each other. However, there are times when there are more than two participants in a duel. Sometimes there's 3, rarely there's 4, but there are some extreme cases in which more than 10 companies fight for a single prize. Because of the sheer number of participants, the only way to settle the duel is through a tournament. It is as it's stated. It's a single elimination tournament. If you win, you advance to the next round. If you lose, you lose. The company that wins the entire tournament will receive the ultimate prize, Yuna explained. That is exactly right, confirmed Claudia. These kinds of tournaments are so rare that I've only ever seen a few documented cases throughout history. It's surprising that you're doing it for this, Yuna added. Claudia sighed. You see now why I'm having a headache? The agreement between two major world leaders has consequences that affect the whole world. It's only now that we're feeling it. The Ocean King and the Draconic Queen's agreement was unprecedented, leading to more unprecedented results. So if I win this tournament, I'll get Main Street? Michael asked. Well, not exactly. Main Street is being fought over by all companies in the Upperwood District. However, those companies don't have the same statuses as other companies. This means that I can't put you in the same tournament as the Quench Company. We've divided the tournaments into 3 sections. There's the high-class tournaments, which are participated in by companies like the Quench Company, the Pyramidic Cuisine, and other big names. The prize for this tournament will be 60% of the territory in Main Street. Then there's the mid-class tournament made for companies that are successful, but not at the highest degree. They're fighting for 30% of Main Street. And last, there's the low-class tournament. These are the companies that are struggling and barely able to maintain their business in Metropolis. There's a lot more companies in this category than the upper 2 combined, and they're all fighting for 10% of Main Street. Even before the tournament started, Michael had already lost a majority of the territory to the other companies. However, such was the fate of an unknown company who had just received their permit 1 day ago. So he couldn't really complain. I'm guessing I'm in the low-class tournament. Yes, but this is not an indication of your strength, but simply the result of rules. Any company that receives their permit starts at the very bottom, regardless how well they did during their permit test. Claudia found it very unfair to Michael and the Reborn company, especially since they were the only company able to pass the test in such a short time. His performance was enough to put him in the mid-class tournament. Unfortunately, the association rules didn't account for someone performing so well during their permit test. Oh, a tournament? Can I join? Zion asked. Unfortunately, only the leaders are allowed to participate in the low-class tournament, Claudia said. Ho ho ho. That would have been fun. But I'm sure Michael doesn't need our help, Grieve chuckled. Of course. My boy will sweep through all the tournaments, beating everyone and taking control of the entire Main Street, Lydia proclaimed. Mom, it doesn't work that way, he reminded her. Anyway, you have to prepare for the tournament tomorrow, Claudia said. As for me, I'll have to prepare so much paperwork for this damn tournament. I'll have to excuse myself for now. Once Claudia left, Michael immediately went to work on preparations. There were a lot of things to prepare for their expansion here in Metropolis, like the Golden Road and other such features. And since they had nowhere to stay here in Metropolis, they all decided to return to Angora City for now to start the preparations. His mom wanted to stay and cheer him on, but he told her that he needed some time alone to mentally prepare himself for the duels to come. Eventually, they all left with Fudge using his shadow transport skill to teleport them all out of here in an instant. Yuna, on the other hand, chose to stay behind to help Claudia with the paperwork she had to finish. This left him all alone in his room. He took out the drone from his pockets and held it in his hands. After hearing about the arrival of the Wyverns, Michael correctly deduced that there would be so much more duels now than in the past. As business became more competitive in Metropolis, it would be inevitable that he would have to participate in a few of those duels himself. This tournament would just be the first of many duels. Because of this, Michael's decision for the drone upgrade became obvious. He needed firepower. He needed something that would help him win duels. Because of that, he decided to take the Unity Grenade option to upgrade. There wasn't much need for him to upgrade to the Unity Gun MK.2, since the drone already had 2 barrels of Unity Gun. And if need be, he could fire off his own Unity Gun from his finger. Now, Unity Gun was very powerful, don't get it wrong. However, its destruction was only limited to a single ray like a bullet. With its near instantaneous arrival, it could create a lot of devastation. However, Michael wanted to have a little more oomph for his firepower. That's where the Unity Grenade came in. Could be treated as a last resort. Chapter 455. Grenade?
No, bomb.
Purchasing drone upgrade. Michael saw the drone start to pulse with power once again. Its red veins emerged from its interior, somehow giving the illusion that the mithril artifact was alive. Nanoparticles started to form on the underside of the frame. A cylindrical shape started to appear, forming a very large barrel that the grenade was supposed to be launched from. He waited for 30 whole minutes before the upgrade was finished. Right now, his drone looked like something out of the military. Its offensive capabilities earned it to have the right to be called as the future of modern warfare. This world didn't even have guns. Yet now, he had a weapon that could hover thousands of feet in the air and rain hellfire upon his enemies. Though, of course, he wasn't going to use it with no regard for human safety. That was the reason why he wasn't going to test it out right here in the middle of Metropolis. He then tapped on the drone's red button to withdraw its glasses for the drone vision. A satisfying click emerged as the drawer shot out from the side, allowing Michael to grab its contents. He put on the glasses and entered the drone's very body. Within a second, he found the whole world turned black before his consciousness transferred over to his mithril artifact. He was now piloting the drone as if he was the drone itself. As he commanded it to fly, the propellers roared into life as he soared out of the windows and out into the skies. Once he was out of earshot from everybody, he stopped and turned idle. Now is the chance for me to see if I can really use my spells while inside the drone. According to ChatJK4, transferring his consciousness into the drone allowed him to also transfer his powers into it. By all accounts, this drone was now him. It had all of his supreme talents and skills without any drawbacks at all. Now, for ordinary people, conjuring a magic spell required very specific routines that they practiced for months at a time. So, when they found themselves not controlling their own body, they wouldn't be able to cast the spell they were so familiar with. But not Michael. With ChatJK4 by his side, a little adjustment was made on the fly to make the spells completely compatible with his new drone body. As he concentrated, a magic circle appeared beneath the drone's frame. A shadow emerged from the circle before wrapping itself onto the drone. Michael saw the world turn into darkness once again as he entered the shadow. This was none other than his favorite spell, the shadow transference skill, allowing him to trade places with his clone at any time and any place. After a second, the shadow subsided back down into nothingness as Michael saw himself in a completely different location. He was now in the forest east of Angora City. This was the previous habitat of the fairies before they moved to the nation of Reborn. And of course, he left some clones here in case he ever had to go here again. He looked around him and saw nothing but trees and vegetation. However, about 4 kilometers off into the south, he saw his very own Rebornians working on the Golden Road. He definitely didn't want to disturb them, so he went a little bit further away for him to test out his drone's new capabilities. Once he was completely alone in a 10-kilometer diameter, he commenced the testing. First, he wanted to see the capabilities of his drone's Unity gun. And strangely enough, the 2 barrels sticking out from the side of the drone felt completely natural to him as when he had 2 arms. It was as if they'd been there the entire time, when he knew in reality they weren't. He could turn it side to side, up and down, with complete and total mobility. "I'll target that bald tree over there," he said as he set his sights on the tree sticking out from the entire forest of greenery. The drone's interface suddenly changed. It now showed a crosshair aiming directly at his target, down to the very branch he was thinking about. The 2 barrels moved forward, creating an almost single ray of point with perfect accuracy. And with a single thought, he fired the 2 guns. A near instantaneous beam of pure unity shot out from the barrels, piercing straight through the thin branches of the tree and breaking it off from the rest of them. Impressive, he thought. With a few more tests, he saw that once he set his sights on a target, the crosshairs wouldn't leave it no matter how much he moved. It was like a cheat aimbot. As long as his eyes could keep up with it, the drone's targeting mechanisms could too. Now that he was done with the guns, he now set his sights onto a large boulder below him. It's time to test out the Big G. Unity guns were good for hitting small targets, but sometimes he needed a lot more firepower to defeat a large area of enemies. As he set his sights onto the boulder, the short but girthy barrel in front of the drone adjusted its aim. He ensured once again that there weren't any living things near the blast zone before triggering the shot. He commanded it to shoot. Plunk. A slow-moving white ball the size of a baseball shot from the barrel and went straight down towards the boulder. He didn't know the exact blast zone for this grenade, so he piloted the drone further out from the target. And soon, the white ball of unity met with the large boulder. Upon contact, a bright white light shot off from the point of impact, which was soon followed by the image of the boulder getting obliterated into microscopic pieces, with the blast zone continuing to grow from the point of impact. Trees, dirt, soil, rock. Everything around the blast was destroyed from the grenade. Far away, Michael then felt the booming shockwave coming from the blast. It even disoriented his drone a little bit, with his interface experiencing a slight buzz before it quickly corrected itself. That was bigger than I expected. He looked at the aftermath and felt like a part of the forest was devastated by TNT. According to ChatJK4's calculations, the total blast zone for the grenade was about 40 meters in diameter in total. For something named as a grenade, its destructive properties were definitely on the bomb side. Once he felt it was safe, he flew the drone closer to the blast. And as he did, he suddenly felt a strange occurrence. The air seemed different. It felt empty. It was only when he got closer did he realize that he couldn't get a sense of mana at all. They were gone. He felt as if his connection to nature and the world had been cut off. This feels terrible. Is this what normal people feel like? Michael felt like a muggle in this blast zone. He knew that the Unity grenade had the ability to disable all mana from the blast, but he didn't think it would be this potent. If he, with a supreme talent for magic, couldn't even use mana at all, then other people surely wouldn't either. Chapter 456. Start of Low-Class Tournament. After a bit more testing, he found out that the magic EMP lasted all around the blast zone, which was 40 meters in a sphere. And according to the description of the grenade, even abilities would be hindered inside the blast zone, but only for a limited amount of time. He tested this out by using his switches inside a newly exploded Unity grenade. And surprisingly, it looked like his ability was blocked for a good 5 seconds. Although this didn't seem all that long, it would be considered a lifetime during intense battles, especially those like Chucky, whose entire ability revolved around gathering momentum. And after a few more testings, he realized that the grenade had a much longer cooldown than the Unity guns. Those only took 10 seconds to reload, while his grenade took an entire 2 minutes before it could be used again. It made sense, given how powerful the blast was. The drone needed more time to gather mana in the air. All in all, he was satisfied with the upgrades he had for the drone. It certainly upped his fighting capabilities by a significant margin, especially fighting against magnetics. Now I'm prepared for the tournament. He transported his drone out of the forest and back to Metropolis in an instant. He exited the drone vision and put back the glasses into its container before he packed up the entire drone itself into his pockets. Once he was done, he headed out of his room and sought out Claudia to find out more details about the tournament for Main Street. "Oh, have you recovered well enough?" she asked. He responded with a flex of his muscles, which seemed to be enough for Claudia. "Well then, you're just in time. The low-class tournament for Main Street has already begun. Don't worry. I put your fight to the last so that you'll have more time to recover." She handed him a parchment paper which showed the entire bracket for the tournament. He looked through the names and found none that he recognized. On the very edge of the paper, he saw that Reborn was matched up with a company named Peter's Wood Carvings. How does this tournament even work? Where does it take place? Right here at our very headquarters. Most ordinary duels take place here. But for special duels like the one between you and Chucky, which requires more privacy, we have special locations hidden throughout the Queen's region. But for the low-class tournament here, most of them don't have that thing that you have, so there's no need for that much privacy. Some even request for there to have a public audience as a form of advertisement so that people would go to their companies once they saw how powerful they were. Of course, both parties have to agree to this before we approve of them. But once the tournament has progressed to the semis and the finals, we'll have to move them to a special new location. Claudia guided him over through the association headquarters, passing through the iconic marble pillars of their building until they reached the end where there was just a wall facing them. He could hear faint sounds of swords clashing and some grunts and shouts over the wall. "This is one of our duel arenas. It's just a plain circular court where the duelers get to fight each other. Do you want to see?" Of course, Michael didn't decline. This would be a good time to see the competition that he was about to face. He didn't underestimate his opponents just because they were in the low-class tournament. Company status didn't necessarily equate to fighting power. Maybe there were some people here who were really good fighters but very weak businessmen. In fact, this would be their chance to shine through the competition and give themselves an advantage. Michael and Claudia both entered a door to the side that led to the outside. This place, unlike the interior, was made out of stone with a lot of dirt on the surface. They both walked through the stairs leading up before they found themselves on the bleachers overlooking the entire circular arena. They weren't the only ones here. There were a few other spectators scattered around the seats. Some of them are just like you. They're participants in the tournament too, and they come here to scout their opponents. Some are just civilian spectators who happened upon the public duel. This is just the first round of the tournament, so there's not many people here. But I bet there will be many more as the rounds pass by. Michael looked at the arena, where two fighters were currently locked in a fierce battle. They clashed swords, chipping their very blades from how strong they pushed each other. Their blood and sweat flung off their bodies as they chased each other down, hoping to make the other surrender. He noticed that they weren't using much magic in the fight. At most, they'd give themselves a boost with some physical arts, but that was about it. Eventually, one of the duelers won as they disarmed their opponent with a masterful sweep. "I surrender." Some of the spectators clapped their hands both for the winner and the loser. "Good fight." They were both evenly matched. It was fortunate for us that they faced each other so early in the tournament. True. I'd be defeated by that guy even though he lost. A lot of people were praising them for their battle. As for Michael, judging by strength and skill in the sword alone, they were certainly much better than him. But that was if he didn't use any of his spells or skills, and simply used the sword to fight. More and more fighters took to the stage and dueled each other. He saw many varieties of weapons being used, but not that many magicians fighting in the arena. The only one he saw ended up losing to a guy who used gauntlets. The magician was too slow to cast his spell and ended up getting overwhelmed by the boxer. Eventually, his name was called up by the association employee announcing from the middle of the stage. "Good luck," Claudia said. "Though I know you won't need it." He nodded at her and slowly went down the steps. As he did, he garnered quite a few looks from the spectators who were curious to see an actual child participating in the duels. A kid? Who's the leader cruel enough to do that? Is that even allowed? I feel bad. Can I just fight for him instead? Companies had the option to bring out any one of their employees to fight in the duel. It didn't necessarily have to be the leader. So, most of these people thought that Michael's boss played a cruel prank on him and signed him up for the competition. Even his opponent looked at the association employee to complain. "I can't fight a kid. I don't want to hurt him." The association employee then looked up at the stands, to where Claudia was sitting. After getting a nod, he knew that the fight could continue. "Take your places. It's time to duel." Chapter 457. Genius Mystic User. Michael stood at the opposite edge, waiting at his side of the arena. His opponent, a man wearing full metal armor and wielding a giant metal club, looked at him with a disbelieving expression. "Are you sure that you want to fight?" The man asked not because of maliciousness, but because of worry. He genuinely believed that if they fought, he could seriously hurt Michael beyond what the normal limits of the duel allowed. Michael looked at his opponent and nodded. "I'm perfectly capable of fighting. Just to warn you, I am a mystical arts user." The other spectators worried even more. "This is just brutal. I just hope the kid knows some defensive spells. Will he even cast it before his opponent rushes him?" Magicians simply didn't have the advantage in these kinds of fights. Physical art users could overwhelm mystical art users fairly easily before they could even conjure up a single spell. They've seen this multiple times before. And not only that, but Michael was just a kid who they presumed to be in the 1 to 2 star realm. "If you really think you can fight, then I will respect your decision. However, I will not hold back, said his opponent. Just the way I want, he replied. Conversely, he didn't want his opponent to get too hurt from the fight either. But he didn't vocalize his concern because he knew other people underestimated him. Start, said the announcer. Immediately, his opponent used a physical art to boost his speed, turning his legs almost into a fiery jet. Contrary to his full metal armor and his heavy club, his speed was almost like that of a jaguar. He was taking advantage of a mystical art user's weakness, close range. And within a second, he had come close enough to swing his club. The weapon glowed red-hot as it got imparted with a physical art skill. The man intended to finish the fight in one swing, hoping that he wouldn't do too much damage on the kid. But surprisingly enough, his club swung through nothing but the air. As he counteracted the force of his own missed swing, he looked forward and saw Michael nowhere in the arena. Oh my God! What? He can do that! The man looked at all the spectators and saw them pointing up in the air. He looked up, following their gazes, and saw Michael floating perfectly above him. A flight spell? That means you're in the 4-star realm, the man realized. The fact that a kid like him reached the 4-star realm felt world-shattering for people like them. They'd never have expected to see a mystical arts genius in this tournament. Who is he? Is he one of those geniuses from the Magic Tower? No. I haven't seen him before. Are you sure? Then how can a child not even in their teens become a 4-star mage? He must be a secret student from the Guild of Arcana. You guys don't know anything. The guild doesn't allow their students to mingle in the world. They force them to focus on their studies in the Magic Tower. He's definitely not a student there if he's in this competition. After hearing this, most people became even more curious about the genius boy who suddenly popped up from out of nowhere. Meanwhile, Michael's opponent eyed him with more seriousness than before. So that's why you're so confident in fighting. I admit, I underestimated you, but that ends now. The man swung his sword, generating enough power in his weapon to conjure an arc of magma that shot towards Michael at fast speeds. And surprisingly, Michael didn't dodge away. What is he doing? Dodge, kid. They all watched as the magma reached just inches away from his face. But that was before a prismatic shield appeared around him and turned the magma into nothing but microscopical mana that withered in the air. What? Just what kind of defensive spell is that? That's not the most surprising part. He's still flying. That means he's double casting without even chanting a spell. He's not even breaking a sweat. If flying wasn't enough to treat Michael as a genius, then simultaneous casting was definitely enough to do it. He made everyone get up off their seats in shock. Meanwhile, his opponent finally felt nervous for the first time. He thought he'd win this easily, but seeing the boy shrug off his attack made him feel like he was about to lose. The man jumped up, carrying his large club with him. He chased Michael, swinging heavy and hoping to hit him at least once. Yet, the boy kept speeding away from him every time. The man stood in the arena, looking up at Michael, as he tried to catch his breath. All of his attempts at hitting him ended up wasting his energy instead. Eventually, Michael had enough and conjured all 4 basic elements in the air: fire, water, earth, and air. Although he only used the 4 basic spells, water ball, air ball, fireball, and earth ball, just the fact that he could conjure it up in the first place meant that he had masteries over all of them. Everyone gasped. Seeing all 4 elements being wielded was akin to the moon turning blue. They had never seen it happen in their entire lives. They'd only ever heard it from books and in legends. 4 element masteries. That's impossible. Who is this kid? Even Claudia couldn't help but jump up at her seat. You still have something up your sleeve? She asked in disbelief. She thought him having a diva was already surprising enough. But now, he was also a terrific genius in the mystic arts as well. Was there nothing that this kid could do? He was even more of a genius prodigy than Yuna. As a genius-level diplomat and an astounding talent in the way of the rapier, Yuna was thought of as one of if not the best new descendants in the whole world. But as it turned out, that crown was reserved for Michael. Still, no one was more surprised than Michael's opponent. He just stood there, jaw dropped, and watched as the four elements crashed into him at the same time. The four spells created a large explosion, sending his opponent crashing into the wall with his metal armor dented and charred. The association employee in charge of announcing the winner was tongue-tied. It wasn't just her. It was everyone else who witnessed this historic moment. And seeing that his job was done, Michael just floated up back to the stands and returned to Claudia's side. All the while, everyone's eyes were just locked onto him. "I move up to the second round, right?" he asked her. "Yup," she answered. "When would that be?" "Tomorrow." Since he had nothing left to do, Michael decided to leave for the day, leaving everyone else still completely unable to process what they had just witnessed. Was that real? I don't know. Pinch me. OW. That's real, all right? What's the kid's name again? Michael? His name was etched onto their very minds. It was so surprising that they wanted to tell it to others as well. Because of that, tomorrow's tournament ended up getting so many more spectators than normal. Chapter 458. Underdog. On the second day of the tournament, Michael returned to the association headquarters and headed to the arena. But on the way there, he was intercepted by Claudia, who gave him a warning. "Hey, just a heads up before you get in there. A lot of people showed up today to watch the tournament," she said. "How many?" "Full capacity. What do you expect when you show such a feat yesterday?" Michael was too used to the nation of Reborn, where everyone knew about his talents. He had to remind himself that his existence alone was considered an anomaly, a genius of unprecedented levels. He was just glad they didn't know about his supreme talent, or else this would have gotten way more out of hand. Still, though, he didn't mind having lots of spectators. It was about time for people to learn about his magical talent. People have actually been impatient since this morning. "Everyone's been wanting to see the boy who can wield all four elements," she shouted. "8, he corrected her. "Huh? What was that?" "Nothing. Anyway, I have a duel coming up, right?" Claudia felt like she had just heard something incredulous again, but decided not to pursue it. "Yeah, you're actually just in time. You're next in line to fight." Michael and Claudia both walked to the arena, finding themselves a spot at the very top of the stairs. This allowed them to subtly enter without getting the attention of the spectators. Luckily enough, though, they seemed to be plenty occupied by the fight below. One of the duelers was someone Michael saw from yesterday. He was the extremely skilled sword fighter who others considered to be one of the forerunners of the competition. He's from a company called Spartan Leather. They're actually a decently ranked company in the Upperwood district, having both physical and business power to compete against the best of them. They've consistently placed number 35 out of 54 in the festival, which is just at the limit of what the low-class tournament allows. And just like before, the Spartan Man, a nickname he gained from the spectators, used his great physical strength in tandem with his sword skills to overwhelm his opponent. But surprisingly, his opponent was able to parry the Spartan Man's strikes with minimal swings of his knife. It looked like his opponent wasn't even putting in any effort to fight. "And who's his opponent?" Michael asked. Claudia had to look at her scrolls to confirm. "They're from a relatively unknown company called Serpent's Wash. To be honest, I'm not really familiar with this company since they've just established themselves recently. According to this, they offer laundry services in the Upperwood district. So, they're just like us? They passed the permit test too." Claudia looked back at her scrolls again. "It would appear so. They passed the permit just a few weeks ago, actually, and they just barely passed the 7,000 sales mark." Michael was surprised since the association typically only gives out 5 permits in 1 year. It was a crazy coincidence to have 2 permits happen in just a few weeks. But if they were able to get 7,000 sales in 7 days, then they must have good business techniques to achieve it. Still, that didn't necessarily mean they were stronger than the Spartan Man. In fact, that was the general consensus within the spectators. His opponent is running away, but it's only a matter of time until Spartan Man picks apart his sloppy knife skills. "I agree. But doesn't Spartan Man look a little bit exhausted now?" "You're right. He should have gotten a few hits at this point, but all of his attacks get parried by this guy. Everyone was surprised that this unknown serpent guy was going toe-to-toe against the fan-favorite Spartan man. However, as the fight wore on, it became evident that the serpent man wasn't just fighting. He was dominating. His knife skills accurately parried every single sword strike from the Spartan guy. For such a small weapon to fight against a sword, it must mean that there was a large gap between their physical art spells. The fact that the Spartan man showed exhaustion and wariness in his face, while the serpent guy showed nothing but a relaxed expression, showed everything that Michael needed to know. The serpent guy was going to win. And just like he said, the Spartan man thrusted his sword prematurely because of exhaustion, allowing a small vulnerability in his ribs, just enough for a knife to pass through. The serpent man lunged, blurring his body as he closed in. The two remained in close contact, with the spectators completely unaware of what happened. Eventually, the sound of metal clanging into the ground echoed into the arena. The Spartan man let go of his sword and slowly backed away from his opponent. He held the side of his stomach, which was now bleeding uncontrollably from the knife wound. "I surrender." The whole arena went silent. They couldn't believe that the frontrunner was defeated just like that. And in such convincing fashion too. "Yeah, I won," said the serpent guy. A few others in the arena jumped down and congratulated the guy. Presumably, they were from the same company. "Damn, this tournament is so easy. Ha ha ha, save it for when I get land on Main Street. You just beat the best fighter in the tournament. We basically won this already." They all laughed and joked with each other, celebrating this win. However, their boasts and their arrogant words earned them some glares from the spectators watching above. Meanwhile, the Spartan man refused any of the treatment from the association employees and approached his opponent. "Good game. You beat me fair and square," he said, reaching out his hand. The serpent man briefly stopped celebrating and looked back at him. Eventually, he approached with a warm smile and shook hands with the Spartan man. But unexpectedly, the man pulled the Spartan man closer to him before he whispered, "Good game? You would have never been able to beat me in a million years. This isn't even a warm-up for me. Try again, never, loser." The spectators didn't hear their conversation at all. So, they were left wondering why the Spartan man had such a look of anger and humiliation on his face. Eventually, the serpent man and his friends all left the arena shouting their premature celebrations to anyone who could hear. They didn't care that the whole arena turned silent because of their obvious pompousness. This left an entirely sour taste in the mouths of everyone who wanted the Spartan man to win. "Those guys were jerks," Claudia said to Michael. She was one of the few who heard what the serpent man whispered, and she didn't like it one bit. She knew she had to be neutral, but she was inwardly wishing for their downfall in the coming rounds of the tournament. "Michael!" When she turned to look at Michael, she realized that he was already gone. She looked around before she eventually found Michael on the bottom of the arena, quietly waiting for his opponent to show up. A minute later, his opponent did show up and the duel commenced. But not even a minute later, the fight was decided. Michael won, and in such a fast time that he waited longer than when he fought. Chapter 459, Serpent. The fight went so fast that people barely had any time to process what happened. "Winner Michael," the announcer said, clearly still in disbelief on what she just witnessed. Some were still too shocked about the upset from the previous fight that they completely missed everything that happened in the span of a few seconds. They only found out what happened when the announcer shouted the results. "What? It's over? Did a fight even happen? I missed it." Many failed to see it, but those who did couldn't even speak out since they were still unsure of what had happened. They saw Michael stand in the arena, facing his opponent, and as soon as the fight started, some kind of shockwave emanated from Michael and hit his opponent square in the chest, crumpling his armor and sending him flying off into the stands. That was it. It was over before it even began. "Wait, isn't he the child you said that has 4 element masteries?" "Oh yeah, he's that kid from yesterday." Once they realized who he was, everyone's eyes started to focus on him. They didn't have to know what happened to know that defeating an opponent of that caliber took skills and power. The man had reached the second round on his own merits. Yet, Michael defeated him in just a few seconds before the man could even show off his skills. Slowly, more and more discussions followed about the current state of the tournament. It was one upset to another. The people they thought would win ended up losing to someone completely unknown. Now, the two current frontrunners were Michael and the Serpent Guy. Although they hated how he defeated the Spartan man, they couldn't help but think that he had the skills to reach first place in the tournament. Meanwhile, with the fight already over, Michael floated back up the arena and rejoined Claudia. "That was fast," she muttered to him. "Are you in a hurry or something?" He shook his head. "I was just in a bad mood." After hearing what the Serpent Guy had to say, Michael ended up becoming angry as well. The man was too overconfident for his own good. So much so that Michael couldn't wait until the two of them matched against each other. But after looking at the tournament bracket, the two of them would only meet at the finals, unfortunately. So, he wanted to get the fight over with as quickly as possible so that he could fight him in a duel. "Anyway, you've advanced to the third round. You just need 3 more wins before you get to the final." Michael had already seen his potential opponents and found none of them to be too challenging. His absolute unity defense and his near-limitless combinations of spells coupled with his supreme skill made it extremely easy to win against normal opponents. While all of this was happening, the mid-class and the high-class tournament was simultaneously happening as well. Most of the high-class duels were taken in secret because of how high-profile these companies were. Dickie's department, of course, participated in the duels and was the current leading favorite to win the whole thing. He wanted a piece of Main Street as well. However, the Quench Company was actually too big to participate in something like this. Not only was it beneath them, but they also had no need for any possession of Main Street as they owned multiple other lands that were already in the path of the parade. However, the Quench Company was so big that entire departments could be considered as their own companies. As long as Dickie only used the resources of his department, then he was free to join the tournament as he pleased. His greatest competitor was the Pyramidic Cuisine, who not only prided themselves in the kick of their spicy foods, but also the kick of their chefs. Everyone expected either of those two to win, but unexpectedly, a dark horse was able to breeze through the competition just as well as those two. Many even believed that they had a chance to win against Dickie's department. And it wasn't just the high-class tournament that was plagued by upsets. The mid-class tournament had its own dark horse as well. And just like the low-class one, the dark horse had already defeated the leading favorite to win. Michael didn't care much about the happenings outside of his tournament and kept on showing up every single day. The days flashed by as he won the third round, then the semifinals until he eventually reached the finals. Just one more before he won the entire thing. And the only one standing against him and Main Street was the Serpent Guy, who was actually named Cobra. Cobra and the guys behind him were already celebrating their victory once they saw who they were up against. "Boys, this will be easy. Ha 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 ha. I can't believe a kid got to the finals. The low-class tournament is a joke." They were so overconfident of their abilities that they never even checked out any of the competition. Cobra always showed up, won his duel, and left without watching any of the fights. He completely missed Michael's show of force. "Guys, a little respect. The boy may be young, but he got to the finals on his own merits," Cobra said to his friends. "Still, the results of the match won't change. I'll win either way." His words ended up getting the ire of all the spectators nearby. They hated how arrogant they sounded. "Screw you guys. I hope you lose. Our genius boy will beat your ass." For the last 3 days, the spectators had seen how Michael beat every single one of his opponents with an overwhelming victory. No one was a match against his 4-element mastery. Even his simple fireballs and water balls would decimate any defenses his opponent could conjure. "You talk about an easy win? Ah, you don't even know what you're up against. Prodigy boy, show him what you got," shouted one of the audience members. Despite the overwhelming negativity from the crowd, Cobra and his serpent group remained uber-confident. "Cuckoo, so what if he's a genius? That won't matter. That's enough," Cobra said to his friend. "Let's get this duel going. The longer we wait here, the longer I don't get Main Street." Cobra then directed his gaze at the very top of the arena. Miss Claudia, I would like your assistance, please. I invoke our right to privacy. As soon as he said that, the crowd erupted in complaints and angry remarks. What? You said all that and you won't even show the fight. Coward. Let us see how Michael throws your head to the ground. Cobra shrugged. It won't matter anyway. The fight will be finished before it even starts. You won't get to see anything anyways. Despite the complaints from the crowd, Claudia walked down to the arena and joined Michael and Cobra. You wish for a private duel? She asked. That's right. The crowd erupted again. You can't do that. Claudia immediately held up her hand, stopping everyone's shouts. It's well within their rights. Michael, do you agree to his wish for a private fight? Michael nodded. This was better. Chapter 460. Private Duel. Claudia nodded. All right. According to the rules of a duel, both of you will be led to a random, secret location for your arena. Wait, Cobra interrupted. He looked at Claudia with a sly smile on his face. I'm not finished. I invoke our right for a sanctum duel. As soon as Cobra uttered those words, Claudia was shaken. She wasn't expecting to hear that coming from him. How do you know that? She asked him, suspicious. Cobra shrugged it off. It doesn't matter how I know. What matters is that you'll fulfill my request. I'm sure that a Montgomery of your stature would be capable of creating a sanctum. Am I right? Michael was clueless, but he did know that something weird was going on. There was something going on with Cobra and the rest of the Serpent group. What is a sanctum duel? He asked Claudia. However, she still seemed unable to process the fact that Cobra knew what a sanctum duel was. I'll explain it for her, boy. A sanctum duel is a kind of duel that takes place in a different place. A place that is completely cut off from reality. It's kind of like a pocket dimension if you've ever heard of it. The only difference is that a sanctum duel is something that is not real. It's a completely fabricated reality that is made by none other than this beautiful woman right here. Montgomerys like her have the ability to create sanctums completely from scratch. If you want a duel that takes place in a forest full of trees, she can create that. If you want a duel that takes place on a small island in the middle of an ocean while a storm is raging, she can create that. If you want a fight floating in the middle of the clouds, that can be arranged. Michael looked at Claudia and the look on her face confirmed Cobra's words. Montgomerys have been given the ability to create sanctums that fit perfectly to the specifications of our duelists. A tundra, a desert, whatever our duelists feel they have the most advantage in. It's one of the reasons why we are chosen as arbiters for all duels, she confessed. Why didn't you tell me? Claudia sighed. I didn't think you would hear about it so early. I certainly didn't expect you to hear it from someone like Cobra. Cobra was supposed to be from a company that just recently obtained a permit in Metropolis. However, his knowledge of sanctum duels told her that there was more to his story than what was written on the paper. She approached Michael. You can decline, she told him. Sanctum duels are only known about by a select group of people. Her tone only meant one thing. Sanctum duels were only meant for duels regarding magnetics. This meant that Cobra was probably a magnetic himself. It would make sense why he was so overconfident during his battles in the tournament. If he had a diva, his boasting would all be backed up since no kind of ordinary man that wasn't at the top of their cultivation could contend with an ability. That was why they didn't care if Michael was an ultra genius that could wield 4 elements at the same time. They didn't care. They didn't have to. Cobra looked at Michael with a grin on his face, acting like he had already won. It was as if he was just waiting for Michael's surrender at any moment. I accept the sanctum duel, Michael said. Claudia looked at him and he looked at her. He gave her a reassuring nod, telling her that he knows what he was doing. After remembering what he was capable of, Claudia eased her worries. I must admit you're pretty stupid to accept a sanctum duel. But I respect it, said Cobra. Now let's talk about the details. Since the sanctum duel was a completely fabricated world, they could add any feature they wanted into it. So, the most logical thing to do was to choose an environment that would specifically be beneficial to their own powers. I want a really large open area, Cobra smiled. Lots of rocky outcrops covering the plains like a maze. Cobra began describing his perfect and ideal hunting ground, down to the exact specifications of the stones that he wanted. He rattled on, taking almost 10 minutes. Claudia remained standing, listening to his every word. After he was done, she looked at Michael and asked for his ideal battleground. I'm fine with what he said. Immediately, Cobra started laughing out loud. Come on, don't make it too easy on me, he chuckled. Michael was supposed to have a counter offer. He was supposed to give his own modifications to the environment so that it would benefit him, not Cobra. If he wanted to, he could even ask for a completely different environment, and Cobra would be the one to adjust. The negotiations for Sanctum duels usually took hours, if not days, because of how important an environment was during a fight. Could make or break a duel. However, Michael didn't even attempt to change anything, making Cobra have the complete advantage over the fight. Are you sure about this? Claudia asked. Michael smiled. I'm sure. It was lucky that Cobra's advantageous terrain also worked in favor for Michael. But even if it didn't, he would still accept Cobra's Sanctum without changing a single thing. He wanted to beat the guy at his own game. All right, let's get out of here first, away from the public, before I create the Sanctum. Claudia led the two of them out of the arena, with the spectators cheering Michael on and booing Cobra. You can do it, boy. Don't let him win. Michael held up his hand, acknowledging their requests. Cobra scoffed when he saw this. They then entered a basement facility in the association headquarters. They entered an underground bunker with no windows, no decorations, just a simple stone brick floor. I will now build the Sanctum duel as you have requested, Claudia muttered. She put herself in the middle of the room, closing her eyes as she summoned a strength that was hidden inside her body. Her eyes suddenly lit up with a white light. Her entire body began levitating an inch off the ground. She began muttering unintelligible words until finally, the light in her body flashed so bright that it blinded everyone, including Michael. When he opened his eyes, he saw a swirling white portal that looked like the Milky Way galaxy turned to the side. The Sanctum has been made in accordance with your requests. The duel will commence once both parties have entered inside. All rules still apply. Kong didn't hesitate and jumped inside the portal. Don't make me wait, he warned Michael before he completely disappeared beyond the swirling white dust. As Michael was about to go inside, Claudia grabbed his wrist. Good luck out there. Don't make my niece a widow, she joked. He quickly took his hand away from her, embarrassed. Not you too. I would rather fight than deal with this. He jumped in, entering the Sanctum duel. Chapter 461. Sanctum duel. As Michael stepped into the portal, he found himself in a completely new environment. He looked around and saw a bright blue sky overhead, with absolutely no cloud nor sun in sight. Yet, the world was still properly lit without it. Everything seemed natural, yet unnatural at the same time. The ground underneath him was soft grass, and all around him were these large rocks that obscured his parts of his vision. They were positioned in such a way that they seemed like obstacles and partitions in a maze. This looks real. Yet, the mana contained inside is completely artificial. Michael felt like he was in a spell. This wasn't a pocket dimension. This was an entirely fabricated world that had 4 walls on the sides. There wasn't anything beyond it, as if this was just a realistic movie set. How do you like your first experience in a Sanctum duel? Cobra's cocky voice echoed out from the distance. Judging from how far it echoed out, it seemed that he was placed at the very opposite end from where he was placed. Michael used his supreme skill, peering through the large rocky surfaces blocking his vision. Eventually, he saw the light mana signature of Cobra, standing completely still with his hands crossed on his chest. I'll give you this one chance and one chance only. Surrender now. And why would I do that? Cobra spread his arms wide. You are of no match to me. I am transcendent. It doesn't matter if you are a genius in the mystic arts. Magic spells bow down to my power. Let me let you in on a little secret. Those who control the world control power. They hoard it for themselves. And for people like you who think that they can move up in the world, are left completely behind and are left ignorant about the true power that this world bows down to. And you're not one of us? Michael asked, with his voice echoing through the stones.
No.
Not me, Cobra scoffed. I guess this is a good time to tell you the truth. I am not a loser like you. I am part of one of the strongest companies in Metropolis, Basilisk Ores. As Cobra revealed his true origin, he laid low and kept himself hidden from Michael at all times. He slowly walked forward, stalking his prey like a snake about to pounce. What are you talking about? Claudia told me you're from the company Serpents, Washington. If he was where he said he was, then he shouldn't have been in this competition in the first place. He should have been limited to the high-class or the mid-class tournament. Haha, yes. According to all official recordings, I am the leader of the Serpents, Washington. But off the books? That's a different story. I was excommunicated from my company on purpose in order to legally set up my own company, Serpents, Washington. Michael heard of shell companies before. In his previous world, shell companies were businesses that only existed on paper, meaning they had no actual business operation. There were legitimate reasons for using a shell company, but it could also be used for nefarious purposes like tax evasion, money laundering, fraud, or to conceal ownership. And it seems that that last one was applicable in this case. In the official rankings, Serpents Wash is a new company who doesn't have any territory or ownership inside Metropolis. But in reality, Basilisk Ores is funding everything that we are doing. They even secretly bought some products from us during our permit test, which allowed us to pass it quite easily. Michael slowly realized what they were planning to do and why they went through this much effort. You want Main Street, he said. Ha ha ha. That's right. We know we can't defeat those juggernauts like the Quench Company. Even with our strength, they're too strong to defeat. The high-class tournament will end up in their hands. So, if we had fought fair and square, we would have never gotten a single piece of land in Main Street. Yet, because of association rules, those weaker than us will get a chance to win land just because they're in a lower bracket than us. This is unfair. Even the best fighter in the mid-class or the low-class tournament can't even hold a candle to our weakest soldier. And somehow they'll get the land? We'll never let that happen. So, you created a shell company so that you can participate in the low-class tournament and dominate? Cobra laughed. That's right. And there's nothing that you can do about it. What if Claudia finds out? Michael asked, his voice echoing from the rocks. Kukuku. Do you see her here? This sanctum duel is completely private to the two of us. She won't know anything until we go outside. She won't know the truth, whether I accidentally use too much strength or not when I kill you. Michael stayed silent. Ha ha ha. How were you so stupid to agree to all my terms in the sanctum duel without even countering a single time? But I get it. You're too young and too naive. Too bad you won't have the chance to live and develop. I won't let you. You keep talking like you're sure. What if I win against you? Michael asked. Cobra scoffed. Still don't believe me? Then I'll show you. The man took out a purple knife from his boots. Its blade glowed with power, signaling its strength as a true mithril relic. With this weapon in hand, Cobra began to summon his true strength deep within his heart. Power coursed through his veins, intoxicating him. It gave him absolute confidence in his fight against a literal kid. The boy, no matter how talented he was, had no chance against a true diva. As he concentrated, a figure shimmered above his head. His diva was a snake-like figure, with no eyes and only a mouth. It wiggled above him as he stayed idle. His diva was an earthworm. Cobra felt in tune with his diva, allowing him to draw upon its power and activate his ability. He raised his knife in front of him and started to sway it left and right like a worm burrowing through the mud. Keeping his entire figure obscured within the rock formations, Cobra's skin began to shimmer and change color, fitting his surroundings. A few seconds later, his entire body vanished, completely invisible to the naked eye. Even with his supreme skill, Michael saw Cobra disappear from his vision. The light mana he was giving off started to be covered by an invisible coating that he could not see through no matter what he did. Where are you? Michael asked. Ha ha ha, you will never find me, Cobra said, his voice echoing through the sanctum. No kind of spell will peer through my ability. Ability? Michael asked. Don't think I don't know what you're doing. You think that you can locate me through my voice. But that won't happen. But since I'm so nice, I will explain to you the difference between you and me. Cobra weaved through the stone formations like a snake. My ability allows me to become invisible to the world whenever my target cannot see me. Your eyes will never see through my invisibility. But as Cobra moved, the grass underneath his feet crumpled under the weight of his body. And unbeknownst to him, a drone had already flown up in the air above him. Chapter 462, Drone Shot. While Cobra kept walking through the stone outcrops silently, Michael stayed in place at the very edge of the battlefield. He tucked himself at the corner and sat down. He had already equipped his glasses, entering the drone vision to transfer his consciousness into his mithril artifact. And while Cobra was so occupied with his own bragging, he secretly deployed the drone and piloted it to fly high up in the cloudless skies. He would have wanted to come a lot closer to the ground, but he didn't want to risk the sound of his drone being heard by Cobra. As he stayed up in the air, he saw the tiny movement of grass down below. And just like that, he was able to locate Cobra's body without any hardships at all. Abilities are something that completely transcend the normal logic of the world. We defy it. And my ability allows me to bend light itself to turn myself completely invisible. As long as your eyes don't lay eyes on me, you will never know when I sneak up behind you. Cobra kept talking, blissfully unaware that Michael was monitoring his every move above. What? No response. Come on, don't be shy. Ask more questions. This Cobra's attempt to goad Michael into giving up his location. He took Michael's silence thinking that he was afraid of being located. But in truth, Michael just couldn't speak because he was piloting the drone. Good. Just stay where you are and don't let me find you. In the meanwhile, let me take this entire battlefield into my own paradise. Under his invisibility, Cobra's worm thrashed its head side to side as he activated another one of his abilities. He took his purple knife and stabbed it in the ground. As soon as he made contact with the grass, the giant worm above him started to eat through the soil one giant chomp at a time. Michael saw the ground underneath Cobra's feet start to glow a violet light. And after a few seconds, the light completely disappeared, leaving the grass looking completely untouched. I don't know what that is, but it's best to avoid it. Thankfully, he was looking at the entire battlefield overhead. So even if the light disappeared, he could mentally mark the location in his mind so that he'd know to avoid that specific patch of land. And with ChatJK4's help, a highlight of the trap became visible in the drone vision interface. There's no escape, little boy, Cobra shouted. I will hunt you down through the ends of the soil. Get out now so that I can put you out of your misery. If you don't, then you'll end up swallowed by the earth. I'll bury you so deep in the ground that you'll suffocate, prolonging your death. Isn't it so much better to die by my knife? Michael inwardly thanked Cobra for being so overconfident that he very easily gave up all his secrets even without him asking. Now, he knew that those patches of land were like quicksand and that anyone who stepped into it would be swallowed deep into the earth. Cobra continued to walk through the rocky outcrops until he eventually reached the very end where Michael spawned. He kept his voice low, tiptoeing as he slowly went into the very corner of the battlefield. And finally, he saw his target sitting quietly behind a large rock, facing the edge of the sanctum walls. Found you, Cobra said, with the invisible coating around him starting to disappear. You know, you could have made this a lot easier for me if you had just surrendered. But now, I'm actually quite annoyed that you had me set up all those traps. I'm gonna enjoy killing you. And I heard that your company was pretty good, right? The Reborn company. The first company to ever pass the permit test in just 3 days. Maybe I'll just take it for myself once you're gone. How about that? Cobra raised his knife above his head as he walked closer to Michael. And just as he was about to plunge it down into the boy's chest, a buzzing sound suddenly erupted behind him. Bzzzzzzz. Startled, Cobra looked behind and saw a strange metal object flying in the air. He couldn't understand what it was. You're going to kill me and take Reborn? Michael's mocking voice spread out from the drone, making Cobra shocked to his core. If you want Reborn, you'll have to experience reincarnation first. I'll help you with that. The two antennae-like barrels on the side of the drone pointed themselves to Cobra. And even though he didn't know what it was, his intuition told him that this was something dangerous. The giant worm's head appeared above him as he used his purple knife to become completely invisible. Just then, the drone fired off a volley of unity gun right in front of it. Suddenly, Cobra's body appeared on the ground as he clutched his stomach in pain. "ARJH!" he screamed out. What the hell was that? This was the first time he had ever felt something so painful. This wasn't just a gunshot wound, it was a high-powered unity laser that completely disintegrated the mana in his body. Of course it was going to hurt. Cobra glared at the drone hovering in front of him. He didn't know what was happening, but he knew that Michael was the one responsible for this. Driven by pure anger and pain, Cobra quickly turned around and tried to stab Michael's body with his knife. But it was at that moment that he realized that Michael was no longer sitting on the ground. He was standing, with the drone glasses already taken off and currently in his hands. "You're not the only one with power," Michael said as the futuristic, mechanical hand appeared above his head. The appearance of his diva took the soul out of Cobra's body. He looked ashen, as if he had just seen a ghost. He would have never thought that a boy like him was a magnetic. It was inconceivable. Michael then threw a small block of iron towards Cobra before he could react. It quickly attached to his chest, freezing him in place for almost a second. He then raised his hand and formed a finger gun. A bright light gathered at the tip of his finger before another unity gun blasted off directly towards Cobra's chest. The beam of unity penetrated through his chest, before a violet glow appeared and protected Cobra from experiencing instant death. Michael noticed that the glow came from Cobra's heart, meaning that it was probably the Godforge pieces that saved him from the unity shot. Knowing that he would need time to reload, he quickly left the area before Cobra regained control of his body. Cobra's giant worm eventually wrangled itself off from Michael's ability, shattering the glass the switch imposed upon his body. Once he unfroze, Cobra looked around, feeling like something weird had happened. What was that? When he looked around, he no longer saw Michael anywhere in the vicinity. "That was your ability, wasn't it?" Cobra shouted maniacally as he looked around for Michael. "Haha. Fine. Try and run away. We'll see if you can dig out of the hole you're walking into." Chapter 463. Drone Reconnaissance. Cobra waited to see one of the traps he set up earlier to clamp down hard onto Michael's feet and drag him down into the depths of this sanctum. He listened for Michael's footsteps, which kept on going further and further away from him. But no matter how far he got, his quick soils never activated. Cobra climbed up the tallest rock formation and looked over the entire battlefield from above. There, he saw Michael expertly dodge away from his quick soils as if he knew where they were. "You even know where they are?" His exasperated voice came from his very soul. The boy that he had underestimated this entire time turned out to be one step ahead of him this entire time. It was humiliating and infuriating at the same time. Michael's strange powers and that strange flying metal he had with him gave Cobra a foreboding sense of defeat. But he consoled himself with the fact that Michael was running away from him. "That light attack you have, you can only use it once, am I right? Or else you wouldn't have escaped from me." Cobra took this as a sign of weakness. Michael had to run away because he was in trouble if he fought Cobra close up. "I'll catch you," Cobra shouted as he jumped down the giant rock face and started chasing Michael through the maze of the battlefield. Since this was his design, he easily maneuvered through shortcuts and turns easily. Still, he found himself unable to catch up to Michael since the boy could move through the maze as well as him. Then finally, Michael stopped in place. He jumped up to a rock and faced Cobra from a distance. "I wasn't running away from you. I was running away from my own attack." Before Cobra could decipher Michael's words, he heard that same buzzing sound as before. He looked up and saw the drone staring down at him. Michael controlled the large barrel to aim directly down towards Cobra. Once it was in line, he commanded it to release the Unity Grenade. This was why he tried to get as far away as he could from Cobra. He didn't want to get caught in the blast zone. Meanwhile, Cobra looked up and saw a bright ball of light plop down from the strange metal object. He flinched, thinking that it was another one of those ultra-fast attacks that he couldn't see. However, this attack was very slow in comparison. It was like an apple falling from a tree in his perspective. Although he didn't know what it was, Cobra became apprehensive of whatever the drone released. And judging from the bright white light, he correctly assumed that it contained a tremendous amount of energy that he had to be careful with. Cobra slashed the air above him with his knife using an asterisk pattern. Immediately, a sinkhole appeared directly from where he was standing. It looked like an endless pit that continued to swallow everything into complete darkness. As soon as the grenade was about to hit him directly in the head, a strange power seemed to redirect it towards the sinkhole in the ground. Cobra was able to create a tunnel that allowed him to avoid a direct hit from the grenade. With the glowing ball swallowed up by the sinkhole, Cobra thought he was in the clear. However, as he looked down, he saw an intense light coming from the sinkhole that shined brighter and brighter until he felt the soil beneath his feet start to rise up like a volcano about to explode. Boom! An explosion of soil, rock, and grass erupted from the sinkhole, sending Cobra flying through the sanctum with burn marks all over his lower body. He landed harshly on the ground, tumbling a few turns before his back crashed onto the edge of the battlefield. The wall shimmered for a brief moment as Cobra impacted on it, but soon stabilized after a second. "Gh!" Cobra gasped, trying to return the wind that was knocked out of his lungs. He couldn't believe that the small glowing ball could erupt with such a powerful explosion. The endless sinkhole he created with his worm diva was supposed to swallow everything into the earth, nullifying any explosion into a harmless fart. Yet the Unity Grenade was able to overpower his ability and explode without impediment. He lifted his head up and was soon terrified at what he saw. A third of the battlefield was destroyed and reduced into a mere crater because of the explosion. The rock outcrops that formed the maze formation of the sanctum were completely nullified, as the blast threw most rocks and boulders down and out of their position. "What the hell is your ability? What is your weapon?" Michael raised his hand into a point, aiming it directly at Cobra. Cobra immediately recognized this hand signal. It was that near-instantaneous light attack that almost killed him. Desperate to escape from the Unity gun, he took his purple knife and swung it in the air. The worm diva above his head thrashed around and created another burrow through reality. Cobra waited for his body to turn invisible just like before. But as the moment passed, he was soon horrified to find out that he couldn't activate his ability. He felt disconnected from his diva. Unable to turn himself invisible, he was an easy target for Michael and his Unity gun. A blast of Unity released from Michael's fingertips, hitting Cobra on his shoulders. "Ah!" He ignored the searing pain in his body and forced himself to get up. If he didn't, he'd get hit with another one of those lights. He tried to walk away, but the drone buzzed towards him and fired another blast of Unity gun that targeted his legs, turning him near paraplegic. Ha-ha! He crawled, trying to run away, and in this moment, he felt the power of his diva return to his body. The temporary ability interference from the grenade had finally worn off, giving him a chance to escape. Cobra flipped his knife upside down before he staked it on the ground. With all the force he had left, he slashed the knife down, creating a slit on the ground for him to crawl towards. Soon, his body disappeared into the ground, fulfilling his diva's true purpose, to be a worm. Michael looked around, trying to see any signs of Cobra burrowing through the soil. Thankfully, he had ChatJK4 by his side. Microscopical disturbance of soil in that area. A crosshair appeared in his vision, telling him where Cobra was supposed to be. With his Unity gun reloaded, he shot the ground. It shot through the soil, with the sound of sizzling grass echoing through the battlefield. Unfortunately, it didn't seem to reach deep enough to bring out the worm from underneath. He tried again, using his drone in tandem to play whack-a-mole with Cobra. Shots of Unity gun rang everywhere as soon as the cooldown for it finished. But unfortunately, Cobra buried himself too deep in the soil for him to be affected by the shot. Knowing that he needed something more power, he commanded the drone to drop another Unity grenade indiscriminately on the ground. Chapter 464. Carpet Bomb. Another explosion erupted from the ground, turning another large part of the sanctum into a crater. However, there was no sign of Cobra anywhere near the explosion. The Unity grenade should have been powerful enough to reach deep through the earth. Not only that, but the side effects of the blast would have interrupted Cobra's ability that allowed him to tunnel through the ground. This means he escaped. The grenade may be powerful, but it was slow. Cobra could have escaped to a different part of the sanctum once he saw the glowing ball of power plop out of the drone. That's fine. You'll lose any escape routes eventually. Michael patiently waited for the Unity grenade to go off cooldown before he targeted another spot in the ground. He continued to carpet bomb everything as he tried to search for the elusive worm. The meticulously planned rock outcrop maze was turned into nothing but craters overlapping over each other. The boulders turned into rubble. The grass turned into burned soot. Eventually, no matter how big the battlefield was, Cobra ended up having no place left to burrow in. Michael targeted the very corner of the wall, the last place that hadn't yet been caught in the grenade's blast zone. And as soon as the glowing ball touched the ground, another large explosion erupted outwards, sending chunks of soil flying away. The natural boundaries of the sanctum shook because of the explosion. But amazingly, it held up against the force and continued to be stable. Michael was surprised at the resilience of this fake world. It made him want to learn more about it. He would definitely ask more questions from Claudia if given the chance. But for now, he focused on defeating Cobra. And as the dust settled, there he was. Cobra lay wasted in the middle of the crater. His hair was disheveled. His skin littered with burn marks. His armor and clothes were tattered into pieces, barely hanging on to his body. And most of all, his face, one of despair and disbelief. Your ability can disrupt other abilities? Of course, that wasn't really the truth. The Unity grenade came from his mithril artifact, which was a completely different thing from his ability. Cobra's ability was at its limits. His diva may be good at stealth, traps, and ambush tactics, but it wasn't good in a frontal assault. Because of that, he knew that he couldn't use his ability anymore to fight against Michael. On a last-ditch effort, he tried to summon a magic circle to cast a physical art spell. He wanted to strengthen his body enough to walk. But even that was impossible. He couldn't even feel anything from his magic cores. It was as if all the mana in the surroundings had disappeared, giving him no chance to use any kind of spell. Even magic too. What kind of ability do you have? Michael stayed silent and looked down at Cobra from up the crater. Ah. Cobra forced himself up and looked at Michael. But you made a mistake. If I can't use magic, then neither can you. There's no mana in the air. Realizing this gave Cobra a second wind. His near-broken body was given a last spurt of energy as he limped towards Michael with his purple knife in hand. Haha. In the end, I'll win. You're a kid. You're a mystic arts user. You don't know combat. In an environment devoid of mana, only those who were proficient in combat would win. Cobra thought he had won. But Michael wouldn't have purposefully made an environment that would cause him to lose. Who said I can't use magic? He asked Cobra. Then he took out an iron block from his pockets. Cobra recognized it as the object that made him lose time for an entire second. It was a switch. Cobra tried to anticipate when Michael would throw it at him. But instead, Michael didn't throw it. He gently placed it on his own chest, keeping it on position the entire time. As soon as he attached it to himself, the mana in his body suddenly regained its power. It was turned on. His magical ability, which had been paused by the interference of Unity grenade, had been switched on. With power back in his system, Michael raised his hand and pointed his finger at his final target. As soon as Cobra saw the light gather in Michael's fingertips, dread filled his heart. No. This isn't possible. I shouldn't lose. He tried to get up, but his injuries were far too severe to even stand up. He fell back down, his hand barely holding onto the knife. "Damn you!" Michael pulled the trigger, with the unity beam heading straight for Cobra's chest. The shot was near instantaneous, burning through his flesh and reaching his heart. The Godforge pieces used the rest of its energy to generate some kind of force field, successfully preventing the unity gun from piercing through Cobra's heart and killing him instantly. However, the injuries he sustained were more than enough to knock him unconscious in a near-fatal state. He laid on the ground, motionless, and with the Godforge pieces losing their inner defenses, they became subject to a very strong attraction coming from Michael's body. Small droplets started shedding off Cobra's heart before leaving his body and shooting off directly towards Michael. Michael moved closer and closed his eyes. Cobra tried to kill him. He didn't have to feel guilty about getting his Godforge pieces and destroying his cultivation. He let the Godforge pieces slowly transfer over to him naturally. The giant worm diva appeared above Cobra's unconscious head, pounding its head on the ground in an act of defiance. It wasn't long before Cobra's entire diva cultivation was torn away by Michael's natural magnetism. As the last drops of the Godforge pieces left his body, the worm diva shimmered in and out of existence before being completely erased forever. Michael looked down at his own heart and saw the new Godforge pieces slowly cover more of the surface. And as it did, the futuristic, mechanical hands appeared above him and started to grow even more. Nanoparticles similar to when the drone began its upgrades appeared on the diva and started to build upon the existing parts. The left arm, which had only been a hand up to this point, started to grow a wrist and ended halfway towards the elbow. Michael closed his eyes. It wasn't enough to get him to the next stage of body formation, but it was a significant enough chunk to make real progress. He felt his connection to the diva becoming ever more closer as his cultivation got stronger. And he even felt that, with more Godforge pieces, he could unlock an entirely new possibility for his ability. He wasn't sure of it, but it was an intuition. Soon enough, he saw the entire sanctum start to shake, looking to be on the verge of collapse. Then, he felt a strange force overcoming his entire body. It was a similar feeling to when he first entered the sanctum through the Milky Way portal. A powerful magic yanked him out of the sanctum and back into the real world. Chapter 465. Mamba. Michael opened his eyes and saw himself back in the underground bunker as before. Standing opposite him was Claudia, whose body slowly dimmed as her power winded down. Once the duel was decided, the sanctum's existence was no longer needed. The Milky Way-like portal dissipated out of the air, closing the door to the unique battlefield forever. Claudia looked at Michael and saw his clothes in completely normal condition. It didn't even look like he had gone through a grueling duel. Compared to that, she looked down and saw Cobra's body laying still, bleeding out and barely clinging to life. With how his condition looked, Claudia knew that the battle ended not through surrender, but a knockout instead. "You won," she said, with her voice a mixture of joy and disbelief. She didn't think that the outcome of the duel would be so one-sided that one of them received almost fatal wounds, while the other didn't even have a single scratch on their body. "There's something you have to know," Michael said to her. He immediately told her about what Cobra told him during the battle. He told her that the newly established Serpent's Wash was actually just a shell company from the much larger Basilisk Ores. Claudia bit her lips, anger slowly filling through her head. She couldn't believe that they had such an audacity to pull this kind of thing right in front of her nose. The worst part was that they almost won. If they had killed Michael in a duel and became the winner of the tournament, she wouldn't be able to take it back. They were meticulous enough to plan murder during the duel. Claudia had no doubts that once they won the prize for the tournament, they would erase all kinds of evidence in their books to prevent her from finding out what happened. They were this close to getting away with it, and they would have, if they hadn't been unlucky and fought with Michael, a boy with unexpected talents. "That damned company. I'll rain hellfire upon their business," she proclaimed. "Don't worry, Michael. There are strict rules in Metropolis that make sure crimes of this kind are well punished. They'll lose everything they have." She couldn't help but scoff. Basilisk Ores were willing to risk their entire business just to gain a small part of land in Main Street. She couldn't believe the idiocy in their decision. What is a shell company anyway? And what's the difference between a shell company and a sub-company? Aren't they the same thing? Michael wanted to know the difference because he had multiple sub-companies of his own. And he had ambitions to expand all of them in Metropolis as well. A sub-company is something that is managed independently by a different person, most likely a descendant of the parent company. A subsidiary may be given resources, but they operate largely on their own. Meanwhile, a shell company is something that only exists on paper and has no business at all. Think of it in human terms. A parent company is an adult human, while a sub-company is their child. Both have similarities, but they are two completely different persons. But shell companies are like disguises. It's like an adult human putting on clothes to seem like a different person. But in reality, they're just the same one. In this case, the Basilisk Oars should have sent one of their children to the tournament. Instead, they just put on a disguise and entered it themselves. The Serpent's Wash should have disclosed their relation to Basilisk Oars. That way, the association could have correctly estimated their strength and put them on the mid-class tournament. We should go to the other tournaments. We have to warn them about what happened, Claudia said. Meanwhile, the mid-class and the high-class tournaments continued to take place throughout the Upperwood district. And surprisingly, the Basilisk Oars completed an upset and defeated the Pyramidic Cuisine in the semifinals, allowing them to reach the final stage of the tournament and face the favorites, the Quench Company. Michael and Claudia both ran through the association headquarters and headed out towards a secluded location away from Metropolis. Just like his duel with Cobra, the Basilisk Oars also requested a completely private arena with absolutely no spectators. Claudia went on horseback while he resorted to flying as they traversed through the plains until they eventually reached a cave on a small mountainside. After running through the tunnel, they reached a large dome-like cavern with stalactites and stalagmites covering the surface. And in the middle of this room, they saw Dickie and an unknown man, who Michael presumed to be an association member because of his white toga. "Miss Claudia?" asked the association employee. "Stop the tournament," she demanded. "Basilisk Oars has violated the rules of the tournament." Dickie noticed Michael with her, and he immediately asked for clarification. "What's happening, Michael?" Basilisk Oars has created a shell company by the name of Serpent's Wash in order to participate in the low-class tournament. The association employee's eyes widened before he immediately rushed to forcefully stop the sanctum duel that he created for the two fighters. He closed his eyes, with a strange light overcoming his interior body and slowly seeping out of skin. His body started to levitate before he mumbled a few unintelligible words. Suddenly, a white powdery portal appeared in front of him. It almost looked the same as the one Michael entered before, but the formation of the stars in this portal was completely different. The portal started to rotate before spitting Chucky out of the sanctum duel. The tall, stocky man tumbled a few times before he found his footing. He quickly stood up, raising his axe in the air as if waiting for an opponent to ambush him. But once he saw the familiar cave around him, he realized that he wasn't in the sanctum anymore. What happened?" he asked, almost exhausted. Michael noticed Chucky's less-than-ideal condition. His left leg was noticeably limping, while his right arm was broken and barely even able to hold on to his weapon. Blood trickled from his forehead, dripping down to his already blood-soaked clothes and armor. He was losing, Michael realized. A few seconds later, another person was shot out of the portal. The man sported a violet mohawk hairstyle on his head and a spear on his hands. The sudden ejection out of the sanctum surprised him as well, and he was unable to stop himself from tumbling a few feet out before colliding with a girthy stalagmite in the ground. He, too, looked to have a few broken spots on his body. But compared to Chucky, the man didn't look to be injured all that much. "What happened?" the Mohawk man asked. And it was only when he noticed Claudia Montgomery approaching him did he realize what had happened. "Ha! So you found out." "That's right, Mamba. You will pay for the fraud you committed under my tournament," Claudia said, glaring at him. Her disdain for Mamba couldn't have been more clear. It's already too late for you." At this point, Cobra would have won the entire tournament and rightfully claimed Main Street as ours. Chapter 466. Already over. Now that we've won the low-class tournament, even you cannot take our prize away from us, Mamba bragged. With Main Street in our possession, Serpent's Wash will no longer just be a simple shell company. It will have its own property, turning it into a legitimate company that you cannot punish. Claudia smirked as she looked at the pitiful Mamba. That's right. If you had succeeded, I wouldn't have been able to revoke your championship in the tournament. Mamba laughed, feeling satisfied with a well-executed plan. He forced himself to get up and walk over to Claudia. He walked past her, ready to leave the cave. But that's only if you won, Claudia added. Her words made him stop in his tracks. He looked back at her, with his eyebrows creasing and showing momentary doubt. But a second later he laughed, realizing that she could have just been lying. Nice try, he told her. I'm not kidding. Serpent's Wash lost in the finals of the low-class tournament. Mamba balled up his fists in frustration until couldn't take it anymore and screamed at Claudia. Stop with the lies. I won, you lost. Get over it. Claudia snapped her fingers and a scroll of parchment paper magically appeared in her palms. I'm sure you know this, she told Mamba. This is the official record of the association. Check the results for yourself. She threw the scroll in Mamba's direction. He caught it in midair before looking over its contents. His arms started to shake as saw the words he wasn't expecting to see. Low-class tournament, Upperwood District. Finals winner, Reborn Company. Finals runner-up, Serpent's Wash. Mamba's anger exploded out as he crumpled the scroll and threw it back at Claudia. The scroll slowly dissipated in the air before it hit Claudia since it was just a magical projection of the record and not a real object. But magic or not, those were official records. It wasn't something that even Claudia could tamper with. Serpent's Wash lost in the finals. A sense of despair washed over Mamba. He knew what this meant. With Claudia knowing the true story, the fate of Basilisk Ores was already sealed. It was already over before they even came here to tell him. They had made a bet. If they succeeded, they would have gained an advantage that would have put them a step above others, letting them ascend into the next level. Of course, the alternative was that they would lose everything they worked hard for, but Mamba never thought that they would lose. This Reborn Company must be cheating too, Mamba frantically claimed. How else can Cobra be defeated? That's not possible. He's our strongest magnetic. He's in the 4th stage of body formation. Mamba's claim surprised both Dickie and Chucky. Chucky fought with Mamba and almost lost against him. This made him think that Mamba was already the strongest fighter in their midst. But as it turned out, there was someone stronger than him. Someone whose diva had already reached the 4th stage. But somehow, Michael was able to triumph against someone as strong as that. This was a jaw-dropping revelation. They couldn't help but look at Michael with a new sense of respect and fear. When Chucky fought with Michael, he thought that the difference between them was only minimal. Michael won their duel, but Chucky thought that if he worked a little harder, then he could have won against Michael. But somehow, Michael won against a 4th stage magnetic. This was impossible. The last time they saw him, which was only a few days ago, he was in the 3rd stage of body formation. That wasn't enough time for him to ascend to the next stage. The only thing that changed about Michael was that he now had a proper mithril artifact with him. How strong did Michael become after coating his flying weapon with Sue? Stop with your excuses. It's time for you to pay the price for breaking the rules. Mamba still couldn't accept his defeat. You're lying. How can a no-name like Reborn defeat the best of our fighters? It doesn't make sense. In his anger, Mamba raised his spear and summoned the power of his diva. A giant cobra head appeared above him, with its jaws unclenched and showing its 2 dangerous fangs. Violet venom dripped from the tip of the fangs, showing its readiness to sting anyone that came in its way. Be careful, everyone. If you get too close to him, he'll inject venom into your body, Chucky warned. This was one of the reasons why he almost lost against Mamba. As an axe user, his greatest strength came from melee distance. However, Mamba's ability allowed him to become virtually untouchable under the guard of his snake diva. Everyone stepped away from Mamba's striking distance. Chucky took this chance to raise his axe and charge towards Mamba. His bronze bull diva puffed out steam from its ears as he gathered momentum before he entered Mamba's sphere of venom. He circled around, taking an approach behind Mamba. But as soon as he stepped within 10 meters of him, the giant cobra diva turned around and lunged at him. In the same instant, Mamba turned around and thrusted his spear towards Chucky. And even though there was a large gap between the Chucky and the spear, Chucky felt an incredible power piercing him in the arm and pushing him out of the striking zone. Blood gushed out of his forearm, with some kind of violet liquid spreading through his veins. The venom inside his body started to shut down his bodily functions. "Coo!" Chucky groaned, falling to his knees. He was about to raise his axe again when he felt a warm hand on his shoulders. He turned around and saw Michael giving him a reassuring nod. "I'll take care of it from here," Michael told Chucky. He slowly walked forward, making eye contact with Mamba. "And who are you, kid? This is no time for you to interfere in adult matters," Mamba ridiculed. Michael didn't answer and kept walking forward, eventually reaching the very threshold for Mamba's striking distance. He raised his foot and stepped forward, activating Mamba's ability. Mamba smiled, with his giant snake diva silently hissing as it positioned itself to lunge towards Michael. He was about to thrust his spear, when all of a sudden, he heard a buzzing sound from behind him. BZZT. A unity gun shot from behind Mamba's chest. The man didn't even know what happened. He looked at his body and saw a searing hole near his heart. He fell to his knees, weak from the gunshot wound. His diva above him phased in and out of existence. Michael walked towards him until they were face to face. "Who am I?"
"I'm Reborn."
Mamba's eyes widened. The whites of his eyes became red as anger welled up in his head. He couldn't believe that he was being defeated by the same kid who ruined his entire life. But before he could do anything, Michael shot another unity gun in his chest and finished the fight before it even started. Mamba collapsed on the ground, with a look of indignation permanently frozen on his face. Michael looked at Claudia. "It's done." But instead of moving, she and everyone else who witnessed this moment just stood in place, completely in disbelief. What kind of power does he have? Both Chucky and Dickie gawked at the realization that Michael hadn't used his full power when they dueled. Chapter 467. News spreading. But no matter how curious they were, no one said a word. A magnetic's power was not theirs to know or share to others. Michael gave them all a nod, silently thanking them for keeping it a secret. Claudia quickly recovered and gestured for the association employee to take Mamba as prisoner. And surprisingly, the employee created another sanctum duel and dumped Mamba's body inside it. Usually, one couldn't force people to go inside a sanctum, but this was a special case. "This is our way of securing prisoners," Claudia explained. "I have proper evidence that they broke the rules of the tournament. This means that we can break the rules regarding his imprisonment. This allows us to create a sanctum despite only having one person enter inside it and without his permission. This was one of the ways Montgomery's ensured that everyone followed the rules. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. He broke the rules, which meant he wouldn't be protected by it." After taking custody of Mamba, Claudia didn't waste any more time and began a hunt for the rest of the members of Basilisk Oars. She issued a warrant to search every single building and property that the Basilisk Oars had. She made sure to raid Serpent's Wash first to gather more evidence to fully convict them of their crimes. A metropolis-wide search ensued, with every employee from the association moving with swift purpose. It only took them a few hours before they raided the supposed Serpent's Wash headquarters, taking the employees by surprise. This was such a shock to them that they hadn't even changed out of their Basilisk Oars uniform, making them look even more guilty. Claudia busted through the main office and began looking through the records of the Serpent's Wash business. Although the service they offered to the general public was laundry, they didn't even have any washing equipment inside their business operations. Once she looked through the records, she found out that Basilisk Oars were literally laundering their money through Serpent's Wash, allowing them to lessen the tax they had to pay to Metropolis. For example, Basilisk Oars gained some money from selling illegal items in the black market. Now, if they recorded this transaction through their records, the association would quickly find out that they made some illegal transactions. Not only that, but they had to pay taxes according to the amount they gained from the sale. So they thought of another solution. They made fake sales on Serpent's Wash and officially recorded that they made a large amount of money from the laundry services they provided. But of course, those sales were untrue. They didn't even offer any service at all. Because of this, they were able to legitimize the money they got from the black market and also pay a lot less tax. If they had succeeded in their plans, they would have kept their Serpent's Wash legitimate and kept on stealing money from the public. But because of Michael, they failed spectacularly. And now, Claudia did everything in her power to shut it down. After sundown, the whole shady business of basilisk ores was completely over. Of course, such a large-scale movement from the association would not be invisible to the people of Metropolis. It wasn't long before rumors and gossip spread around. Hey, did you hear about the basilisk ores? They were excommunicated by the association. I heard it too. I would have never thought that a company like that was doing nefarious business in the shadows. They had a shell company called Serpent's Washington. They even reached the finals of the low-class tournament in the Upperwoods district. It wasn't just the ordinary citizens that became curious with the downfall of basilisk ores. It was also other companies that had close business relations with them. In fact, they were the ones that were most surprised. They entered the low-class tournament to win 10% of Main Street. TSK. That's cheating. I heard that they even sent Cobra to ensure their victory. They were really hungry for the prize. They sent their trump card for the weakest tournament. I heard they still lost though. What? That's not possible. Cobra is a strong fighter that can even compete against the officers from the largest companies in Metropolis. I dare say he could even go toe-to-toe with the officers of the legacies. Yeah, but he still lost in the finals. It was then that the name Reborn became engraved in their minds. Who is this company? They asked themselves. It wasn't long before they got an answer. The Reborn company was a novice in Metropolis. They had just received their permit mere days before the start of the tournament. Of course, such a revelation surprised every other company who heard this. It was especially so once the witnesses of the low-class tournament began giving their statements to the public. They told stories about Michael's power, his genius, and how he was able to control all four elements simultaneously. This news spread like wildfire. Nobody had ever seen a quad-element user before. They had only ever heard about it through legends of old. The fact that he defeated Cobra in the finals gave even more credibility to the claims. Of course, he didn't defeat Cobra through magic, but other people didn't know that. It wasn't long before the magic tower itself had to get involved. They had to. A swarm of people knocked on their tower for confirmation about the validity to the claim that a boy appeared with mastery over four elements. The Tower Master, as well as other senior magicians inside the tower, had to make an emergency meeting just to deal with all the commotion from below. Tower Master. This must be a lie, is it not? It is unlikely that a genius of that caliber would be unknown in the Queen's region. We would have heard about it long ago if it was true. Shall we send a warning about such false claims? Every other mage looked at the Tower Master. However, the man himself wasn't focusing on the meeting. Instead, he was looking at the letter in his hands that seemingly appeared out of nowhere. Dear friend, I forgot to tell you that the boy is a genius in magic. He can control all 8 elements. From Cerberus Augendor. Bye? That's it. No other explanations. The Tower Master's sudden outburst scared the other magicians in the meeting. They had never seen him act like this before. He always painted himself as a man who was cool, calm, and collected at all times. Yet now he looked deranged. Tower Master? The man sighed. Ignore the questions from the public, he said. But sir, that would implicitly confirm the claim that an unknown boy has a 4-element mastery. Didn't you hear what I said? The other magicians had no other choice but to hold their tongues. The Tower Master's words were final, and he wasn't going to budge no matter how much they complained. So, soon after the meeting, The entire Magic Tower was given explicit instructions to ignore any inquiries about the boy with quad-elemental mastery. And as expected, the public took the Magic Tower's silence as a sign that the rumor was true. Michael was a mystic genius unlike no other. This became much larger news than anybody expected. The gossip about the basilisk and the scandal in the tournaments only spread as far as the Upperwoods district. However, the rumor about mystic genius Boy Wonder spread throughout the entirety of Metropolis. Soon, everyone heard about the boy whose talents in magic surpassed even that of the Tower Master of Metropolis. Chapter 468. Pond Rippling. The next day came and the news about Michael's mystic talents continued to spread. But despite how interesting the news was, business still had to continue, especially in the Upperwoods district. Today was the last day of the festival, meaning that this was the last chance for companies to try and increase their rankings by getting a lot of sales. The 7th day of the festival was usually the busiest day out of them all. This was where people swarmed stores in an attempt to buy items and services with the discounts given only during the festival. It was the last hurrah, as others liked to say. Companies doubled their staff, increased their inventory, and prepared for the crowd of people that swarmed through their doors. But as the day started, something weird happened. Many companies saw a distinct lack of people visiting their stores. The amount of people that entered their premises was the exact same as the day before, with not much change. This was very weird because they expected the last day to have almost double the amount of customers they had before. They thought this was simply a slow start, and that more people would come as the day progressed. But as the sun continued its journey through the skies and reached the zenith, the customers they got still remained at a constant rate, with no increase or decrease. Many companies were weirded out at this point, and eventually, they sent out their own people to investigate the cause of this phenomenon. And they didn't have to walk far before they stumbled upon the answer. In the middle of the market plaza, there was a large gathering of people crowding a single point. Why are there so many people in the park? Could there be a really popular store there? What's the company located in the J5 area? However, as they sent out their men to investigate, they found out that there wasn't even a stall or a store where the people were gathering. These people were just standing in line, waiting for nothing. Huh? What are they doing? Are they caught in a trance or something? They eventually asked the customers themselves. And when questioned why they were waiting in line for an empty spot, the answer was that they were waiting for a company called Reborn. Because Michael finished his permit test in 3 days, he was forbidden to continue selling items in a stall. Since the market plaza was reserved only for those companies yet to have their permit, Michael couldn't sell his items despite the demand from the customers. On the 4th day of the festival, people sought out Michael's stall and saw it empty. This left them disappointed, but still optimistic. On the 5th and 6th day, the J5 stall was still empty. And on the 7th day, many customers thought that the Reborn stall would pop up once again, since it was the final day of the festival. Essentially, the people who came from the 4th to the 6th day all returned on the 7th day, which now created this large group of people waiting in line for Michael's stall to return. Once the other companies in the Upperwood district found this out, they couldn't believe it. Wait, they only needed 3 days? Is that even possible for a new company? Is the association sure they're not another shell company? They're sure. Didn't you hear the rumors about the items they're selling? It's all new items that people have never seen before. Due to the unique and high-quality items the Reborn company offered, they finished their permit test in record time, only taking 3 days to pass. And because they finished so early, a lot of customers who weren't able to buy their unique items were left unsatisfied and kept waiting for more. This was unprecedented. What if they continued to operate the stall throughout the festival? Could they have reached a high ranking? This question scared and amazed most of the companies who heard about Reborn. It didn't take long for them to do the math. If they continued selling items throughout the 7-day festival, then it was more than possible for them to reach the top 10 ranking in the Upperwood Festival. For an unknown company, achieving this feat despite only starting in Metropolis a couple of days ago was beyond comprehension. Of course, most of the general public wasn't made aware of this kind of news. It only stayed within the community of companies in the Upperwood district. Still, even a small splash in a pond could end up rippling all the way through the surface of its water. It wasn't long before the Legacies heard about Michael's feat. Bobby heard about it through Dickie. Of course, since Dickie was bound by a vow of silence, he didn't talk about Michael's ability or his weird flying mithril weapon. He only told Bobby about Reborn's feats in the Upperwood Festival, which was already public knowledge. "Who? I didn't think that little guy was so impressive," Bobby muttered. "I would have asked him to become an officer in Quench if I knew how talented he was." Meanwhile, Aerith heard about it after getting contacted by the Association to heal Cobra and Mamba. When she went to treat Cobra of his injuries, she realized that he had gone completely insane. The man kept on banging his head on the walls, muttering some unintelligible words. He had a very deep psychosis, something that even she couldn't repair. Because of this, she heard about Michael and the Reborn Company. It amazed her that a kid she met from a small rural town ended up becoming a genius in the mystic arts. For elemental mastery? I should have recruited him into my apothecary when I had the chance. His talent in healing must be extraordinary. The last one to hear about it was Alaric Goldstone. His entire day was scheduled around preparations for the parade. However, such news became so sensationalized that he ended up hearing about it despite how busy he was. "Interesting," he muttered, fidgeting with the golden ring in his finger. And just like the others, he found out about the crowd gathering in the market plaza waiting for his stall to arrive. Reborn will become a formidable opponent, he realized. His right-hand man, Perseus, and his left-hand man, Orion, questioned the conclusion of their leader. "I don't believe so, Alaric. They're a good company, but not good enough to compete in the top market of Metropolis," said Perseus. "And this Michael kid may be powerful in the mystic arts, but that's not enough to reach the top," Orion added. Alaric shook his head, disagreeing with their observations. "Bobby and Aerith will only see his talents in the mystic arts, just like you both. But I'm looking at something completely different. They passed the permit in just 3 days. This means they got 7,000 sales in such a short amount of time. If they continued to get that much sales throughout the entirety of the festival, then they could have reached the top 10. This is good, but not that impressive. However, many people are missing something. They wouldn't have stayed stagnant in their sales. By all accounts, they would have doubled it with each day that passed. The crowd in the market plaza proves that. And when you take that into account, you can see the number clearly. They would have surpassed the Quench Company and reached first place in the festival. He would have done that in a small little stall. It doesn't matter if he doesn't have enough strength to reach the top. His intangible business talent will allow him to hire all the muscle he needs." Chapter 469. Visiting Main Street. Michael had the permit to establish his company in Metropolis. And after winning the low-class tournament, he now had a space to build his first headquarters in Main Street. He walked up to the association headquarters first thing in the morning and visited Claudia in her office. "Michael, just the man I wanted to see. Do you know what's been happening throughout Metropolis right now because of you?" Claudia asked, putting her hands on her waist and starting sternly at him. "What did I do?" Michael asked innocently. "Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's the fact that a once-in-a-lifetime genius has appeared in the walls of Metropolis. Everyone's been talking about the boy who could wield all 4 elements at once. I would have thought that the magic tower would have intervened by now, but strangely, they stayed silent throughout all these affairs. Did you pay them off or something?" Michael didn't know what she was talking about. However, he did remember Cerberus telling him that he would get the Guild of Arcana off his back in Metropolis. Whatever Cerberus did worked. "Anyway, you're now one of the most popular people in Metropolis. For better or for worse, your company is now in your shadows." Michael didn't mind it all that much. After all, he experienced popularity in all the territories he had been in, like Kingsbridge Town and Angora City. Though for those times, his company was the cause of all the commotion due to how innovative they were. Also, there were a lot of disgruntled voices yesterday during the final day of the festival. Everyone complained that they couldn't buy any items from the Reborn Company stall. I had to issue a statement saying that your company will soon open its doors to all customers permanently. Thanks. I guess I need to start working on our building. Claudia nodded like a teacher lecturing a student. That's right. You better act fast so that you get your operation up and running before the parade happens. I don't know exactly when it'll be, but you should hurry and establish a store within a month. I think that's a harsh time limit, but you need to in order to keep up with the parade. But unlike Claudia, Michael didn't worry about the building. After all, he had concrete by his side. If he wanted to, he could hurry the construction in a single day. He was more worried about the design rather than how fast he could make it. Can I see the place? Claudia took out a scroll from her desk and tossed it to Michael. He unwrapped the parchment paper and saw an official-looking document regarding his new territory in Metropolis. This is your copy of the land's deed. Don't worry if you lose it. We have all documents insured to be kept in a vault, she said proudly. He ignored her and kept the deed in his shadow inventory. Ahem. You are entitled to receive 10% of the territory in the main street of the Upperwood district. Now, due to the rules of the tournament, you cannot pick which part of the street you own. First, the winner of the high-class tournament picks, then the mid-class, and whatever's left will be left to you. If you follow me, I'll show you your land. She headed out of the association headquarters, with Michael following closely behind. They eventually landed on a different part of the Upperwood district, which was quite far away from the market plaza where the majority of people gathered. Only carriages and horses flowed through this area because there weren't any sidewalks for people to walk on. Still, the reason why Main Street was so sought after was not because of the locals, but because of the tourists that would pass through this area in the parade. This corner of the street is now owned by the Quench Company. Dicky already had the place surveyed, and this building will soon be knocked down and repurposed for their needs. The whole street was filled with empty and abandoned buildings previously owned by Flair Corp. Most of the items inside were already salvaged, but there was some remaining paraphernalia left behind, like some wooden signs, some torn-up flags, and even discarded uniforms. Over on the end of the street is your territory. They walked over to the end of Main Street and saw what looked to be an empty warehouse, with its doors open wide. The place had boxes and crates strewn all around. There was another warehouse on the opposite side of the street, and Michael owned that too. All in all, Michael was quite satisfied with what he got. The place may look small area-wise, but he knew that he could always build upwards if he needed more space. Of course, the most ideal place that he could have gotten was at the first corner of the street now owned by the Quench Company. They would be the first ones that the foreigners saw during the parade. But besides that, there wasn't really any difference from the territories in Main Street. How do you like it? Claudia asked worriedly. This entire place looks dingy, but with a little bit of cleaning, it'll serve as a good enough headquarters. If you want, I can introduce you to a good carpenter company that can renovate this warehouse into something better. He declined. There's no need. I'm tearing the entire thing down. She looked at him, wanting to see if he was joking. Are you sure? It'll take 2 months to build it from the ground up. If you want it to be hurried, then you'll have to hire an expensive construction company that can use magic to build it faster. Don't worry, I have other plans. Claudia went silent for a second before relenting. I won't ask. I don't think I have the capacity to be shocked again. She correctly deduced that Michael had something up his sleeves. Anyway, that's about it. If you have anything you want to know, don't hesitate to ask me. Just as she was about to walk away, Michael reached out to her. There is a favor that I want to ask you. There's these 4 companies that entered the permit test, and I want to know where they are. Otto, Rena, Carter, and Pedro packed up their things and got ready to return back to their territories. They had to give another bad news to their family, just like the year before this one. Still, this experience wasn't all that bad. They may have lost the test, but they were able to witness something incredible with Michael and the Reborn company. They felt a sense of pride when they heard about Michael's accomplishment. They felt happy for him and his future in Metropolis. As their carriage left the gates of Metropolis, they couldn't help but look back fondly at the mega city. And it was at that moment that they saw a golden-haired boy standing behind them. Michael, why are you here? Otto asked, getting out of the carriage to greet him. I just came to ask you guys something. What is it? I'm offering you a chance to establish your companies in my territory. It's not Metropolis, but I guarantee you'll have a better life there. Chapter 470, More Subsidiaries. Your territory? Rena asked curiously. If we do we get access to those products that you sold in your stall? Can we buy your soap there? He nodded. Of course. The items that I sold in Metropolis are just a small part of what Reborn offers. They all looked at each other, and even without talking, they all knew what they were going to say. Yeah, we'll accept it. I admire the metalwork in your products. They even look like they're dwarven made. I'd like to learn from the blacksmiths responsible for that. Pedro cheered. Sure. I think you're in for a surprise. Michael smiled. I also accept your offer. Where's your territory? Carter asked. You have two options, he told them. First, you can stay in the Queen's region and establish your companies in Angora City. I'll have my people arrange for you to have your own territories. The first option already surprised them all. Angora City may have declined throughout the years, but it was still a capital city regardless. Back in the days, it had the same prestige and popularity as Metropolis. They couldn't believe that the territory Michael mentioned was Angora City. They would have thought that his territory would only be a small town or village. Wait, Angora City is your territory? How is that even possible? Otto wundert. Long story short, I'm their sponsor. I have a good working relationship with Duke Stelmane. They all gasped. Michael's background was a lot deeper than they could have ever imagined. With Angora City under his control, the entirety of the southern tip of the Queen's region was practically his. If you want something better than Angora City, then you can go to my nation in the parched lands. You own a nation? Their shouts gathered a few curious stares from the carriages lining up on the gates of Metropolis. Yeah, I own a nation. It's in the King's region. Rena remembered something about the parched lands. Isn't that a desolate desert? It was, but we turned into a habitable zone. There was even snow last month. They all couldn't help but have a tinge of disbelief in their faces. Snow in a desert was a completely paradoxical sentence that was inherently hard to believe. I can show you guys around if you'd like. They all looked at each other, before nodding in agreement. It'll take months before we get there, but I think it'll be worth it to see that miracle. Nah, it'll just take a second, he said as he activated his shadow ability and teleported him and everyone else back into the nation of Reborn. Otto and the others were startled once they saw this dark shadow cover their entire field of view. But a second later, the shadow recessed back into Michael's feet and allowed them to see a completely new scenery that looked like it came straight out of a fantasy book. Whoa! What is this place? Are those the mobile stalls that you used? And they're all running on the streets. There's no carriages or horses. The concrete buildings, the flat roads, the automobiles, the lights. Everything was a completely new concept to them. Michael estimated that it would take them a few hours to completely get caught up on all the inventions of the nation of Reborn. Thankfully, the always-present mayor of the nation arrived just in time. Lolo bowed at Michael's visitors and immediately introduced himself to them. Welcome to the nation of Reborn. I am Lolo, and I will help you see the wonders of our nation. As expected of a professional, Lolo led the four out through the streets of the nation like sheep. They were completely silent, with their constant gasps knocking the wind out of their lungs. Michael winked at Lolo and thanked him for such timely moves. At the end of the day, Lolo returned with the four of them. So, what did you all think? Their eyes were completely bloodshot as they stared at Michael. We'll live here. Michael went back to their headquarters and met with Shiina, Castell, and the rest of the crew. Lord Michael, I have already arranged for our new sub-companies to establish their footing in our nation, Shiina reported. All four of them decided to move their entire business and their families to the nation of Reborn after seeing how amazing this place was. They told him that this paradise was infinitely better than what they had been hoping for back in Metropolis. They were even thanking the Iron Maiden that they didn't pass the permit test, or else they wouldn't have been fortunate enough to find the nation of Reborn. They integrated quite fast, seeing as they were already believing in the unofficial and unsanctioned religion of the nation of Reborn. Michael offered to help them with their move, and they were so thankful that they decided to become subsidiaries to the Reborn company. This meant that they would offer a part of their monetary income to Michael in exchange for their help. Since this was beneficial for him, he accepted. As for Angora City, the construction of the sewer and plumbing system has already been implemented, and we are getting extremely good feedback. Our next agenda would be to create a connection with the train back in Neo-Orcus, Shiina added. How about the Golden Road? He asked her. We have reached Batrock Town, Lord Michael. We are now on our way to Metropolis. That was extremely good news. Once the roads connected, he could start selling automobiles in Metropolis. He estimated that this would be his biggest business there if that happened. Shiina continued to report on all the things that Michael missed during his stint in Metropolis. Is that all? Shiina shook her head. You missed something important while you were there, Lord Michael. He looked at her, confused. Really? What? Your birthday, Lord Michael. Congratulations on turning 13 years old. He was so preoccupied with the tournament that he completely forgot his birthday. Though he could have forgotten about it subconsciously because he knew that he didn't want any large celebrations for his birthday. Oh, don't worry, honey. We celebrated your birthday throughout all our territories, Lilia said, hugging Michael from behind and nuzzling her head on his hair. Bro Mike, you missed out on the parties, Zion shouted. Ho ho ho. How could you have forgotten about your own birthday? How shameful, Michael. Grieve. You don't even know your own birthday, he replied. Oh, that's right. I forgot, ho ho ho. In truth, even if he did remember his birthday, he wouldn't take time out of his busy schedule to celebrate it. All of his focus now was in establishing Reborn in Metropolis. He needed to prepare for the arrival of the tourists if he wanted to have a chance at getting Sue. After using the drone upgrades in battle, he couldn't help but greed for more. He yearned for more drops just like an addict. Castell, start the preparation for building our headquarters in Metropolis. I'll give you all the details later. Of course, young master. And it was at that moment that he felt a tug from one of his clones that he left behind in Metropolis. Someone was asking for his attention. After looking through it, he realized that it came from Jimmy, their news correspondent.